The room went silent the second she walked in, not because she belonged there, but because everyone knew she didn't. Elena Ward, the woman they'd spent 3 years ignoring, stood in the doorway of the most exclusive gala in the city, wearing a dress that cost more than her monthly salary and a smile that said she knew exactly what they'd done. Across the room, Dante Russo, the man who ran half the city's underground and all of its secrets, raised his glass. His eyes held something dangerous: recognition, respect, and worst of all for the people who'd mocked her, interest. Stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Elena Ward stared at the cream-colored envelope sitting on her desk like it might explode. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, the kind of paper that whispered money so old it didn't need to shout. Miss Elena Ward and guest, you are cordially invited to the Russo Foundation annual gala. She didn't touch it for a full minute. Around her, the bullpen hummed with its usual chaos. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, associates shouting across cubicles about depositions and discovery deadlines. Morrison and Hale was one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, the kind of place where junior partners drove cars worth more than houses, and where assistants like Elena were furniture that occasionally filed paperwork. Well? Elena looked up. Vanessa Hale stood beside her desk, arms crossed, eyebrows raised in that expression she'd perfected, the one that managed to be both bored and condescending at the same time. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, polished, perfect, and completely untouchable. Her suit probably cost what Elena made in 2 months. Well, what? Elena asked. Are you going to open it, or are you planning to frame it? Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm dying to see your face when you realize what this is. Elena picked up the envelope, slid her finger under the flap. The invitation inside was even heavier than the envelope, printed in elegant script that probably required a calligrapher and a small fortune. It's a gala invitation, Elena said evenly. It's the gala invitation, Vanessa corrected. She leaned against the cubicle wall, examining her nails. Dante Russo's annual charity event. Politicians, celebrities, people who actually matter. The question is, why would someone like you get invited? Elena felt the weight of eyes on her. Conversations had stopped. People were listening now, waiting to see how this would play out. Maybe because I work here, Elena suggested. Vanessa laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Sweetheart, assistants don't get invited to the Russo Gala. Hell, most associates don't get invited to the Russo Gala. I barely got invited, and my name is literally on the building. She tilted her head, studying Elena like she was a specimen under glass. So either there's been a massive mistake, or someone thinks it would be hilarious to watch you try to navigate a room full of people who could buy and sell you before dessert. The bullpen had gone completely quiet now. Elena looked down at the invitation again. The address was definitely hers. The name was spelled correctly, and at the bottom, in smaller print, personal invitation extended by Dante Russo. Her stomach dropped. Oh my God, Vanessa said, reading Elena's expression. You actually thought this was legitimate. That's adorable. She turned to address the growing audience. Dante Russo, the Dante Russo, the one who runs everything from shipping to real estate to God knows what else, personally invited our little Elena to his gala. What do we think, people? Clerical error or elaborate prank? Maybe he needs someone to check coats, someone called out. Laughter rippled through the bullpen. Or she could serve drinks, another voice added. She's got experience carrying things for people. More laughter. Harder this time. Elena's fingers tightened on the invitation, but her face stayed calm. She'd learned that a long time ago, how to keep everything locked down inside where no one could see it bleed. You know what I think? Vanessa leaned in closer, lowering her voice just enough that only Elena could hear. I think someone on Russo's team screwed up, mixed up a list, and now you're sitting here with an invitation to an event where you'll be the least important person in the room, where everyone will know the second you walk in that you don't belong. She straightened up, her voice returning to normal volume. But hey, you should totally go. It'll be character building. The laughter followed Elena as she gathered her things and headed for the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall and sat down on the closed toilet lid, holding the invitation between shaking hands. She wasn't stupid. She knew what this was. Dante Russo was a legend in this city, the kind of man whose name carried weight in boardrooms and back alleys alike. He'd built an empire on construction and real estate, with rumors of less legal ventures woven through it all like steel threads. Dangerous, powerful, untouchable. And 3 years ago, Elena had worked for him. Not directly. Never directly. She'd been part of the administrative team at Russo Development, buried so deep in the hierarchy that she'd never even been in the same room as the man himself. But she'd been good at her job, good enough to notice things. Patterns in the paperwork. Discrepancies in the filing, numbers that didn't quite add up. She'd reported it, quietly, through proper channels. 2 weeks later, she'd been let go. Restructuring, they'd called it. Nothing personal. She'd moved on, found work at Morrison and Hale, kept her head down, tried to forget. But Dante Russo never forgot anything. The question was, why this? Why now? Why invite her to a public event where she'd be exposed and humiliated in front of the city's elite? Unless that was exactly the point. Elena looked down at the invitation again. Her name, printed in gold. Personal invitation extended by Dante Russo. A power play. A reminder. A message wrapped in expensive paper. I remember you, I know what you did, and I could crush you whenever I want. She should throw it away, pretend it never came. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister Mia. Coming over for dinner tonight. Don't even try to cancel. Elena smiled despite everything. Mia had a gift for knowing when she was needed. She stayed in the bathroom for another 5 minutes, breathing slowly, rebuilding the walls. Then she walked back out into the bullpen with her head high and her face blank. Vanessa was at her own desk now, typing rapidly, probably billing some client $800 an hour for emails. She didn't look up as Elena passed, but Marcus Chen did. He was a senior associate, one of the few people in the office who'd ever been decent to her. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod. Not pity, just acknowledgement. She nodded back. The rest of the day crawled by in the usual way. Coffee runs, document preparation. Sitting in on meetings where her job was to take notes while men in expensive suits argued about things she could have resolved in 5 minutes if anyone had asked her opinion. No one ever asked her opinion. At 6 o'clock, she gathered her things and headed for the subway. The invitation was still in her bag, heavy as a stone. Mia was already at Elena's apartment when she got home, sprawled on the couch, with takeout containers spread across the coffee table. You're late, Mia said, not looking up from her phone. I ate your spring rolls. You're terrible, Elena said, but she was smiling. She dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch beside her sister. Mia was 24 to Elena's 30, 6 inches taller, and possessed exactly zero interest in playing it safe. She worked as a freelance photographer, lived in a studio that was basically a closet with a window, and had opinions about everything. Rough day? Mia asked, finally looking up. Define rough. Someone die? Building burn down? Vanessa Hale finally reveal herself as an actual demon? Close. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out the invitation, tossed it onto the coffee table. Mia picked it up, read it. Her eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Holy shit! Yeah, Dante Russo invited you to his gala? Apparently? The Dante Russo? The guy who... Yes. Mia was quiet for a moment, studying the invitation. Then she looked at Elena, and her expression shifted into something sharper. This is about what happened at Russo Development, isn't it? Elena had told her sister everything when it happened. The irregularities she'd found, the report she'd filed, the quiet, efficient way she'd been erased from the company. Has to be, Elena said. It's been 3 years. Why else would he suddenly remember I exist? To publicly humiliate you. That's my theory. Mia set down the invitation. So obviously you're not going. Elena didn't answer. Elena, tell me you're not actually considering this. I don't know what I'm considering. It's a trap. You said it yourself. He wants to humiliate you. Why would you walk into that? Because I'm tired. The words came out sharper than Elena intended. She took a breath. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being the person everyone talks over and looks through. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter that I spent 6 years getting a degree in international development just to end up fetching coffee for people who think I'm furniture. So quit, Mia said. Find something better. Don't let them make you feel like you have to prove anything. That's easy for you to say. You don't care what anyone thinks. And you care too much. Mia's voice softened. Elena, you're brilliant. You know that, right? You speak 4 languages. You built education programs in 3 countries. You managed budgets bigger than Vanessa Hale's shoe collection. The fact that these people can't see it doesn't mean it isn't true. Elena looked at her sister. Then why does it feel like it isn't true when I'm there? Why do I feel like I'm disappearing a little more every day? Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up the invitation again. If you go, she said slowly, you can't go to prove them wrong. You can't go expecting them to suddenly see you and realize they were idiots, because they won't. People like that don't learn. They don't grow. Then why go at all? Because you need to prove something to yourself. Mia met her eyes. You need to prove that you're not afraid of them, that you never were, that you can walk into their world and walk back out and still be exactly who you are. Elena took the invitation from her sister's hands, stared at it. Personal invitation extended by Dante Russo. What if it's worse than I think? She asked quietly. What if he's planning something worse than just watching me be uncomfortable? Then you deal with it, Mia said. And you remember that the worst thing that can happen is you get embarrassed in front of a bunch of people whose opinions don't actually matter. You've survived worse. She had. Elena knew she had. But somehow this felt different. This felt like stepping into an arena where the rules were designed to destroy her. I need to think about it, she said finally. Mia nodded. Fair enough. Now eat your pad thai before it gets cold. And for God's sake, don't let Vanessa Hale live in your head rent-free. They spent the rest of the evening the way they usually did, Mia telling elaborate stories about her latest photography gigs, Elena half listening while her mind spun through possibilities and scenarios. When Mia finally left around 10, Elena sat alone in her apartment, the invitation on the table in front of her. She thought about Dante Russo, tried to remember if she'd ever actually seen him during her time at Russo Development. She didn't think so. He was always somewhere else, in meetings, on site, conducting business that didn't require his presence in the administrative offices where Elena had worked. But she'd seen his signature, dozens of times, bold, aggressive strokes that took up half the page. And she'd seen what happened to people who crossed him. They disappeared from the company. Sometimes they disappeared from the city. Nobody talked about it, but everyone knew. Elena picked up her laptop and did what she probably should have done hours ago. She searched for information about the gala. It was exactly what Vanessa had said, the event of the season. Photos from previous years showed a who's who of the city's elite, politicians in $1,000 tuxedos, celebrities dripping in borrowed diamonds, business magnates who shaped policy over champagne, and in the center of it all, every year, Dante Russo. He was younger than she'd expected, probably early 40s. Dark hair, dark eyes, the kind of sharp-featured handsomeness that looked dangerous even in photographs. He wore his power comfortably, like a second skin. In every photo, he was surrounded by people, but he never looked like he was with them, more like he was allowing them to occupy his space temporarily. Elena found herself staring at one particular photo. Russo at last year's gala, standing slightly apart from a group of laughing socialites. He wasn't smiling. He was watching something off camera with an expression of cold calculation. That was a man who played chess with people, and she was considering walking into his game voluntarily. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Chen. Hey, don't let today get to you. Vanessa's just bitter because you're smarter than her and everyone knows it. Elena smiled. Typed back, thanks, appreciate it. His response came immediately. You thinking about going to that gala? She stared at the message. Maybe, probably not. I don't know. If you go, go for yourself. Not for them. They don't deserve the satisfaction either way. That's basically what my sister said. Your sister sounds smart. Elena set down her phone and looked at the invitation again. She thought about the way Vanessa had looked at her today. The laughter in the bullpen. The casual, everyday cruelty of being treated like she didn't matter. She thought about the months after leaving Russo Development. the quiet panic of job hunting while her savings dwindled. The relief when Morrison and Hale had hired her, even though it meant starting over at the bottom. The slow realization that she'd traded one kind of invisibility for another. And she thought about the person she used to be, before the fear, before she'd learned to make herself small and quiet and easy to overlook. The woman who'd managed education programs in South America, who'd negotiated with government officials and convinced skeptical communities to trust her, who'd stood in front of rooms full of people and made them listen. That woman wouldn't have been afraid of Dante Russo. That woman wouldn't have let Vanessa Hale's laughter touch her. That woman had gotten buried somewhere along the way, under layers of disappointment and compromise, and the daily humiliation of being less than she was. Elena stood up, walked to her bedroom, opened her closet. She owned exactly one formal dress, purchased years ago for a fundraiser she'd attended with her old organization. Simple, black, elegant, in a quiet way. She pulled it out and held it up to the light. It would do. Deep. The next morning, Elena walked into the office with the RSVP card in her purse. She'd filled it out at 2 a.m, sitting at her kitchen table with a glass of wine and a pen that kept shaking in her hand. Elena Ward and guest accepts with pleasure, no guest. She'd left that line blank. This was something she needed to do alone. Vanessa was already at her desk when Elena arrived, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing emphatically at something. She didn't look up. Elena sat down at her own desk, pulled up her email, began working through the morning's assignments with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. At 10:30, Marcus stopped by her desk with coffee. "You're a saint," Elena said, taking the cup gratefully. "I'm really not." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "So, decision made?" Elena nodded. "And?" "I'm going." Marcus studied her face for a moment, then he smiled. "Good. They should see what they've been missing. They won't see anything except what they want to see." "Maybe, but you'll know the truth. That's what matters." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her with the coffee and a strange feeling in her chest that might have been hope or might have been terror. At lunch, she walked to the nearest mailbox and dropped the RSVP card inside. No taking it back now. The days that followed were strange. Elena went through her usual routine: work, subway, home, repeat. But everything felt slightly unreal, like she was watching herself from a distance. She didn't tell anyone else about the gala. Not the other assistants, who would have either pitied her or mocked her. Not her mother, who would have worried. Just Mia and Marcus. And they both had the sense to let her process it in her own way. Vanessa didn't mention the invitation again, which somehow made it worse. It meant she was waiting, watching, anticipating the entertainment of watching Elena crash and burn. A week before the gala, Elena received a phone call at work. "Elena Ward?" The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. "Speaking?" "This is Catherine Mills from Russo Foundation. I'm calling to confirm your attendance at the gala next Saturday." Elena's heart kicked. "Yes, I'll be there." "Wonderful. And will you be bringing a guest?" "No." "Perfect. We'll have your name at the door. The event begins at 7, but we encourage guests to arrive by 7:30. Cocktail attire. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, that's all. Thank you." The woman hung up. Elena sat frozen at her desk, staring at her phone. It was real. It was actually happening. She'd expected some kind of confirmation that this was a joke, a call rescinding the invitation, something to let her off the hook. But there was nothing, just professional efficiency and the weight of a commitment she'd made. That night, Mia came over with her camera and a bag full of makeup. "What's this?" Elena asked. "Research," Mia said. "We're going to figure out what you're wearing, how you're doing your hair, and what message you're sending when you walk into that room." "I have a dress." "I know, you told me. The black one from the fundraiser. It's classic. It's safe." Mia dumped the makeup bag on the table. "And you're not going there to be safe. You're going there to be yourself. So we're going to figure out what that looks like." They spent 3 hours experimenting. Mia took photos, showed Elena different options, talked her through the psychology of color and cut and style. "You're not trying to look like them," Mia kept saying. "You're trying to look like the best version of you, The one who doesn't give a damn what they think. By the end of the night, they'd settled on a plan. The black dress would work, but they'd alter it. Take it to a tailor, change the neckline, update the fit. Elena would wear her hair down instead of pulled back. Minimal jewelry. Makeup that enhanced instead of masked. You're going to walk in there, Mia said, and they're going to realize they never actually saw you before. Elena looked at herself in the mirror, tried to see what Mia was seeing. All she saw was a woman who was terrified of making a mistake. The day of the gala arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Elena woke up at 6, even though the event wasn't until evening. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, could barely think past the static of anxiety filling her head. Mia showed up at 4 with her camera, a bottle of wine, and a determination to document everything. This is historic, she said, setting up her equipment. The day Elena Ward stopped giving a damn. I still give many damns, Elena said. So many damns. Although the damns. Fake it till you make it. Mia poured them each a glass of wine. Now sit down and let me do your makeup before your hands start shaking too much to hold the glass. The transformation took 2 hours. Mia worked with focused intensity, occasionally stepping back to check her work, adjusting and perfecting. When she finally stepped back and told Elena to look in the mirror, Elena almost didn't recognize herself. She looked polished, put together, like someone who belonged in rooms with crystal chandeliers and people who summered in the Hamptons. But more than that, she looked present, solid, real. Now the dress, Mia said. The alterations had transformed it. The new neckline was elegant without being provocative. The fit emphasized her figure without screaming for attention. When Elena moved, the fabric moved with her, liquid and confident. Holy shit, Mia breathed. Elena, look at yourself. Elena turned to the mirror again. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, or maybe she was someone Elena used to know a long time ago. If you don't knock them dead, Mia said, I'm going to be personally offended. What if I fall on my face? Then you get up. What else is there? Elena's phone buzzed. A car service, arranged by the Russo Foundation, waiting downstairs. This was it. Mia hugged her tight. Remember, you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you. I know. And text me the second you can. I want details. Elena grabbed her small clutch, borrowed from Mia because her own bag was a practical leather tote that screamed administrative assistant, and headed for the door. The car was sleek and black and probably cost more to rent than her monthly food budget. The driver opened the door without comment, and Elena slid inside, her dress pooling around her legs. As they pulled into traffic, she watched the city slide past the tinted windows. Normal people doing normal things. Walking dogs. Hailing cabs. Living lives that didn't involve willingly walking into social warfare. She could still tell the driver to turn around. She could still fake sick and send apologies. She could still be safe. But safe had gotten her nowhere except smaller and quieter and more invisible than ever. The drive took 30 minutes. Elena spent it breathing slowly and trying not to wrinkle her dress. When they pulled up to the venue, a historic museum that had been transformed into a glittering palace for the night, her breath caught. There were photographers, actual photographers, a red carpet leading to the entrance, people in evening wear laughing and posing like this was the Oscars. The driver opened her door. Elena hesitated. Miss, he said gently, we're here. She took his hand and stepped out of the car. The night air was cool against her skin. Flashbulbs popped, though not for her. She was nobody, and the photographers knew it. They were waiting for the next car, the next celebrity, the next person who mattered. Elena walked up the red carpet with her head high, and her heart hammering so hard she thought people might hear it. At the entrance, a woman with a clipboard and an earpiece checked her name. Elena Ward, the woman said, finding it on the list. Welcome. Enjoy your evening. Just like that, she was inside. The main hall was overwhelming. Soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers that probably weighed more than cars, tables draped in white linen and scattered with centerpieces that looked like small forests. And people, hundreds of people in tuxedos and gowns, holding champagne glasses and talking in that particular way wealthy people talk, where every word sounds like it might be important or might be nothing at all. Elena stood in the doorway, momentarily frozen. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. Everyone could see it. They were probably already laughing. Elena Ward? She turned. A man stood beside her. Older, maybe 60, with silver hair and kind eyes. He was smiling like he knew her. "I'm sorry," Elena said. "Have we met?" "Dr. James Reeves," he said, extending his hand. "We haven't met, but I know your work. You were with Global Bridge Development, weren't you? The education initiative in Colombia?" Elena's mind went blank. Then suddenly sharp. Yes. How did you... I reviewed your case study for the International Development Journal. Brilliant work. The way you integrated community leadership into the curriculum framework was exactly the kind of innovative thinking we needed in that field." He shook his head, smiling. "I've been hoping to run into you at one of these things. What are you doing now?" Elena's mouth moved, but no sound came out for a second. Then, "I'm working at Morrison & Hale. Administrative position." "Doctor." Reeves' expression shifted. Surprise, then something that might have been disappointment. "Administrative. But your background, you should be running programs, not..." He stopped himself. "Well, that's none of my business, but if you're ever looking for opportunities in international development again, I'd love to talk. Here." He pulled out a business card, handed it to her. Elena took it automatically, still trying to process what was happening. "Dr. Reeves!" Someone called across the room. "There you are." "Duty calls," he said to Elena. "Wonderful to finally meet you, truly." He walked away, leaving Elena standing there with his business card in her hand and her entire understanding of the evening shifting sideways. She looked around the room again, and this time she noticed things she'd missed before, the way people were watching her. Not with mockery, not with confusion, with curiosity. Across the room, Vanessa Hale stood frozen with a champagne glass halfway to her lips, staring at Elena like she'd seen a ghost. And leaning against the bar at the far end of the hall, watching everything with those dark, calculating eyes. Dante Russo. He raised his glass to her, just slightly, and smiled. Elena's heart stopped for exactly 3 seconds. Then it kicked back into rhythm, harder and faster than before, and she forced herself to look away from Dante Russo's knowing smile. She turned toward the nearest table, pretending to study the centerpiece like it was the most fascinating arrangement of white roses and eucalyptus she'd ever seen. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them against her clutch, willing them to stop. Dr. Reeves had recognized her work, her actual work, the projects she'd built, the programs she'd designed, things she hadn't thought about in years because thinking about them hurt too much. Reminded her of who she used to be before she'd learned to disappear. Well. Elena didn't need to turn around to know who was behind her. She'd heard that voice enough times, dripping with barely concealed contempt across the Morrison & Hale bullpen. Vanessa Hale circled around to face her, champagne glass in hand, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I have to admit," Vanessa said, "I didn't think you'd actually show up, and I definitely didn't think you'd clean up this well. Who knew the little mouse had a backbone?" Elena met her eyes, didn't flinch. "Vanessa, you look lovely." "Don't." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Don't do that polite thing you do. We both know why you're here." "Do we?" "You're trying to prove something, that you belong here, that you're more than what you are." Vanessa took a sip of champagne, watching Elena over the rim of the glass. "But here's the thing about people like you. You can put on a nice dress and learn which fork to use, but you'll never actually be one of us. You'll always be the help." Something cold settled in Elena's chest. Not anger. Something calmer than that, clearer. "You're right," Elena said quietly. "I'll never be one of you." Vanessa's smile widened, victorious. "Because I actually earned what I have," Elena continued. "I didn't inherit a law firm from my father. I built programs that changed lives. I worked in places you couldn't find on a map, and when I made mistakes, I couldn't call Daddy to fix them." Vanessa's face went white, then red. "You have no idea what you're—" "Ladies," the voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. Low, controlled, dangerous. Both women turned. Dante Russo stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, looking completely at ease in a tuxedo that fit him like it had been created specifically for his body, which it probably had been. Up close, he was even more unsettling than in photographs. Not because he was particularly tall or physically imposing, though he was both of those things, but because of the way he looked at you, like he could see through skin and bone straight down to the parts you tried to hide. "Mr. Russo," Vanessa said, her voice transforming instantly into something warm and pleasant. "What a wonderful event. The Foundation has really outdone itself this year." "Thank you, Ms. Hale." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I see you've met my guest." The temperature in the immediate vicinity dropped about 10 degrees. Vanessa's smile froze on her face. "Your guest? Elena Ward?" Dante turned his attention to Elena, and she felt the full weight of that dark gaze. "We haven't been formally introduced. I'm Dante Russo." He extended his hand. Elena stared at it for half a second too long. Then she took it. His grip was firm, warm, and when his fingers closed around hers, she felt something electric run up her arm that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with warning. "Mr. Russo," she said. Her voice came out steady. "Small miracle. I'm glad you could make it." He still hadn't released her hand. "I was concerned you might not accept the invitation." "Why wouldn't I?" Elena asked, even though she knew exactly why. His smile sharpened. "No reason at all." He let go of her hand, turned to Vanessa, who was standing there looking like she'd been slapped. "Ms. Hale, I believe your colleague Marcus Chen was looking for you. Something about the Hoffman deposition?" It was a dismissal, a polite one, but unmistakable. Vanessa's mouth opened, closed. She looked between Elena and Dante, clearly trying to process what was happening and failing spectacularly. "Of course," she said finally. "Excuse me." She walked away stiffly, her champagne glass gripped so tight Elena was surprised it didn't shatter. Elena watched her go, then turned back to Dante Russo, who was watching her with that unreadable expression. "That was unkind," Elena said. "Was it?" He tilted his head slightly. "I thought I was being helpful. She did look rather lost." "You know exactly what you were doing." "Do I?" He gestured toward the bar. "Walk with me, Ms. Ward. Let's get you something to drink." It wasn't a request. Elena fell into step beside him, acutely aware of the eyes following them across the room. People were noticing, whispering, trying to figure out who she was and why Dante Russo was personally escorting her to the bar. "You're wondering why I invited you," Dante said as they walked. It wasn't a question. "I know why you invited me." That made him pause. He looked at her with something that might have been surprise or might have been approval, hard to tell. "Really?" he said. "Enlighten me." "You want me to know you haven't forgotten what I did, that you remember every person who's ever crossed you, and you can reach them whenever you want." Elena kept her voice level, professional. "This is a power play, a reminder that I'm only here because you allow it." They'd reached the bar. Dante leaned against it, studying her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "You think I invited you here to intimidate you?" he asked. "Didn't you?" "No." He signaled the bartender. "I invited you here because 3 years ago you did something very few people have the courage to do. You found a problem and you reported it through proper channels, knowing it would probably cost you your job." Elena's throat went tight. "It did cost me my job." "Yes, because the person you reported was my cousin, and he had enough influence to have you quietly removed before I ever saw your complaint." Dante's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "By the time I discovered what had happened, you were gone, and my cousin was skimming approximately $3 million from development projects." The world tilted slightly. Elena gripped the edge of the bar. "What?" "You were right. The discrepancies you found weren't filing errors. They were systematic theft." Dante accepted 2 glasses of champagne from the bartender, handed one to Elena. "When I finally saw your report, I had it investigated. Took 6 months to untangle everything. My cousin is currently serving 8 years in a federal facility." Elena couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was hearing. "You were collateral damage," Dante continued. "Fired for doing the right thing. And I couldn't track you down to make it right because you disappeared into administrative work under a company I had no connection to. He took a sip of champagne. Until I saw your name on a list of Morrison and Hale employees 3 weeks ago, doing filing work and coffee runs. You, a woman who built sustainable education programs in South America. How do you know about that? The words came out sharper than Elena intended. I make it my business to know things, Ms. Ward. His smile was thin, especially when I owe someone a debt. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. He set down his glass. You did your job with integrity and you were punished for it. That's on me, on my company, on my failure to see what was happening under my own roof. Elena stared at him. This was not the conversation she'd expected to have, not even close. So this... She gestured vaguely at the room, the gala, everything. This is what? An apology? This is an opportunity. Dante's eyes never left hers. I wanted you to remember who you are, before they convinced you to be smaller. Something hot and sharp lodged in Elena's throat. You don't know anything about me. I know you're wasting your potential fetching coffee for people who wouldn't last 10 minutes doing the work you've done. He leaned closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker underneath. I know you walked into this room tonight expecting to be humiliated, and you came anyway. That takes steel. Or stupidity, Elena said. There's often not much difference. He straightened up. The question is, what are you going to do now? I don't understand. You're here. You're standing in a room full of people who've underestimated you. What happens next is up to you. Before Elena could respond, a woman in a sleek red dress appeared at Dante's elbow. Mr. Russo, the mayor is asking for you. Tell him I'll be there in a moment. He didn't look at the woman, kept his attention on Elena. Enjoy the evening, Miss Ward, and if anyone gives you trouble, his smile turned predatory, let me know. He walked away, leaving Elena standing at the bar with a glass of champagne she didn't remember accepting and a head full of thoughts that didn't make sense. This wasn't a trap. Or if it wasn't the kind she'd expected. Dante Russo had invited her here to... what? Give her closure? Make amends? Prove a point? She didn't trust it, couldn't trust it. Men like Dante Russo didn't do things out of kindness. They did things because it served their interests. But he'd looked genuinely angry when he talked about his cousin, about what had happened to her. And he'd known about her work in Colombia, had known enough to understand what it meant that she was filing paperwork at a law firm. Elena drank the champagne. It was excellent, of course. Probably cost more per bottle than she made in a week. Quite a conversation. She turned. Marcus Chen stood beside her, looking sharp in a tuxedo and distinctly uncomfortable in the surroundings. Marcus, I didn't know you were coming. Last-minute thing, senior associates get invited to show face, network with potential clients, pretend we're more important than we are. He smiled wryly. You, on the other hand, appear to have arrived as the personal guest of the most dangerous man in the city. Want to explain that? Not really. Fair enough. Marcus signaled for a drink. For what it's worth, Vanessa is losing her mind. She's been on her phone for the last 10 minutes, probably texting everyone she knows to figure out what the hell is going on. Great, Elena muttered. Also, people are staring at you. I noticed. No, I mean really staring, like trying to figure out who you are and why they should have known about you already. Marcus accepted his drink from the bartender. Dr. Reeves has been telling everyone within earshot about your work in Colombia. Apparently, you're some kind of development genius. Elena's face heated. He's exaggerating. Is he? Marcus gave her a look. You never told me you used to run international programs. It didn't seem relevant. Elena, you've been getting me coffee for 2 years, and the whole time you could have been doing my job better than me. That's not... It is true, and you know it. He shook his head. I knew you were smart, but this is something else. Why the hell are you wasting your time at Morrison and Hale? It was the same question she'd been asking herself for months. Years, maybe. Because I needed a job, she said quietly. And after Russo development, nobody wanted to hire me for anything else. Word gets around when you get fired, even if they call it restructuring. Russo Development. Marcus frowned. Wait, you worked for Dante Russo before? Not for him directly. I was in the administrative division. But you worked there. Marcus's expression shifted into something Elena couldn't quite read. And now you're here as his personal guest, and he just spent 15 minutes talking to you like you're the most important person in the room. He paused. Elena, what exactly happened at Russo Development? Before she could answer, a hand touched her shoulder. Elena turned to find an elegant woman in her 50s smiling at her. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Are you Elena Ward? Yes? Margaret Lawson. I run the International Development Council. She extended her hand and Elena shook it automatically. Dr. Reeves just told me about your work in Colombia. I've been trying to fill a director position for our Latin American programs for 6 months. Would you be interested in talking? Elena's brain stuttered. What? I know this is unexpected. Margaret's smile was warm, genuine. But, Doctor, Reeves doesn't praise people lightly. And when he says someone revolutionized community-based education models, I pay attention. Here's my card. Call me Monday. I'd love to discuss opportunities. She pressed a business card into Elena's hand and disappeared back into the crowd. Elena stared at the card, then at Marcus, who was watching her with raised eyebrows. So, he said, this is turning into quite a night for you. I don't understand what's happening. You're being seen, Marcus said simply. Maybe for the first time in a long time. And people are realizing they've been idiots. Across the room, Elena caught sight of Vanessa talking animatedly with a group of senior partners. Every few seconds, Vanessa's gaze would dart toward Elena, her expression somewhere between fury and confusion. She's going to make this hell for me on Monday, Elena said. Probably. Marcus took a sip of his drink. But you know what? I don't think you're going to be at Morrison and Hale much longer. What makes you say that? He gestured at the room. Because you don't belong there. You never did. Tonight just made it obvious. A bell chimed somewhere, signaling dinner was about to be served. The crowd began moving toward the dining area, a beautiful space with round tables and more of those impossible flower arrangements. Elena looked down at the 2 business cards in her hand. Dr. Reeves, Margaret Lawson, both offering her a way back to the work she loved. Because Dante Russo had invited her here, had made sure the right people saw her, had orchestrated this entire evening to give her back what his company had taken from her. She scanned the room, looking for him, found him standing near the far wall, talking to a couple in formal wear. As if sensing her attention, he glanced over. Their eyes met across the crowded space. He didn't smile, didn't acknowledge her, just held her gaze for a moment before returning to his conversation. But Elena understood. This was the apology. Not words, not money, not a job offer from him directly, which would have been tainted by obligation. This was him putting her in a room with people who would recognize her worth, giving her the chance to reclaim the professional life she'd lost. It was calculated, manipulative even, and it was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in years. Elena? She turned. A young woman stood beside her, looking nervous. I'm sorry, but Mr. Russo asked me to show you to your table. For dinner? Oh, right. Elena looked at Marcus. I guess I'll see you later? Good luck, Marcus said. And Elena? Whatever happens, don't let them make you small again. She followed the young woman through the crowd to a table near the center of the room. The place cards were written in elegant calligraphy, and Elena felt her stomach drop when she saw who she was seated with. Dr. Reeves? Margaret Lawson. A man whose place card read Ambassador Richard Torres. A woman named Sophia Chen, who, according to the program, ran a major nonprofit. And at the head of the table, naturally, Dante Russo. He was already seated when Elena arrived, talking quietly with Ambassador Torres. He glanced up as she approached. Ms. Ward, please, sit. He gestured to the empty chair on his left. Elena sat, feeling like she'd wandered into someone else's life. This wasn't her table. These weren't her people. She didn't belong. Elena! Dr. Reeves was already seated across from her, smiling broadly. Wonderful. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk more. Have you met Ambassador Torres? Richard, this is the woman I was telling you about, the education initiative in Colombia. The ambassador turned to her with interest. Dr. Reeves mentioned your work. I'd love to hear more. We're struggling with similar challenges in several Central American countries right now. And just like that, Elena found herself in a conversation about sustainable development models and community integration strategies. The ambassador had questions. Dr. Reeves had follow-ups. Margaret Lawson added perspectives from her own experience. They talked to her like she was a colleague, an expert, someone whose opinion mattered. Elena had forgotten what that felt like. Dante remained quiet through most of it, occasionally adding a comment or question, but mainly just watching, letting the conversation flow around him. At one point, when the others were debating the merits of different funding structures, he leaned slightly toward Elena. "You're comfortable," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "What?" "Talking about this work. You're comfortable. Different than you were at the bar." She was. Elena realized he was right. When she talked about development work, about program design and community engagement, something in her relaxed, opened up. "This is what I know," she said. "This is who you are," he corrected. Before she could respond, the first course arrived, some kind of deconstructed salad that probably had a name she couldn't pronounce. The conversation shifted to lighter topics while they ate. Elena found herself actually enjoying dinner. The food was incredible, the conversation was stimulating, and slowly the knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. She caught sight of Vanessa at a table near the edge of the room, seated with junior partners and their spouses. Vanessa was staring at Elena's table with barely concealed rage. Elena looked away. It didn't matter anymore. Halfway through the main course, some kind of perfectly cooked fish with vegetables that looked like tiny works of art, Sophia Chen turned to Elena. "I have to ask," she said, "how did you end up doing administrative work? With your background, you should be leading programs, not supporting them." The table went quiet. Everyone was listening now, including Dante. Elena set down her fork carefully. "After I left Russo Development, I had trouble finding positions in international development. The field is small. People talk. When you leave a major company suddenly, even with the official story being restructuring, people assume there's more to it." "That's absurd," Dr. Reeves said. "Your work speaks for itself." "Maybe, but without references from my most recent employer and without being able to explain why I left, doors closed. So I took what I could get." "And you ended up at a law firm," Margaret said softly, "doing work that has nothing to do with your training or your talents." Elena nodded. Ambassador Torres frowned. "That's a systematic failure. We lose too many good people that way. People who challenge the status quo or expose problems, and instead of being rewarded, they're punished." "It's not just about punishment," Dante said. Everyone turned to look at him. He was looking at Elena. "It's about power, about keeping people in their place, about making sure everyone knows that speaking up has consequences." His voice was casual, but there was steel underneath. "Is that how you run your organizations, Mr. Russo?" Sophia asked. There was a challenge in her tone. "No." Dante's expression didn't change. "But I'm aware of how others operate, and I'm aware when my own systems fail to protect people who deserve protection." He was talking about what happened to Elena. Everyone at the table understood that. "Well," Margaret said, breaking the tension, "I hope we can fix at least one of those failures. Elena, I'm serious about that director position. I think you'd be extraordinary." "I'd want to hear more," Elena said carefully. "But yes, I'm interested." The conversation moved on, but Elena noticed Dante watching her with that unreadable expression again. After dinner came speeches. The mayor talked about the foundation's charitable work. A doctor spoke about the medical clinic the foundation had funded in an underserved neighborhood. A teenager gave a tearful testimonial about the scholarship program that had changed her life. It was all very moving and probably very calculated. Everything Dante Russo did seemed calculated, but Elena couldn't deny the results were real. The clinic existed, the scholarships existed, whatever else he was, and she suspected he was a lot of things, not all of them legal. He was also genuinely helping people. When the speeches ended, people began mingling again. Some headed to the bar, others to the balcony for air and cigarettes. A string quartet started playing in the corner, and couples moved to the small dance floor. Elena stood up, needing a moment to process everything. She'd come here expecting humiliation and had found This, opportunity, recognition, a way forward, because of Dante Russo. She still didn't trust it, didn't trust him, but she couldn't deny it was working. Miss Ward, Elena turned. A man in an expensive suit stood beside her table, someone she didn't recognize but who carried himself with the kind of authority that suggested he was used to being important. Yes? Robert Chambers. I'm with the Sullivan Group. We handle private consulting for international development projects. He handed her a card. I've heard about your work tonight from several people. We're always looking for experienced consultants. I'd love to discuss opportunities. Thank you, Elena said, taking the card. She was running out of room in her clutch. He smiled and walked away. Dr. Reeves appeared at her elbow. You're going to need a bigger purse. Elena laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. This is insane. This is networking, he corrected. This is what happens when the right people finally see what you can do. Although I have to say, he glanced toward the head table where Dante was talking quietly with Margaret Lawson. Dante Russo is being remarkably helpful. I've known him for years, and I've never seen him take such an active interest in someone's career. We have history, Elena said before she could think better of it. Dr. Reeves's eyebrows rose. Do you? Professional history. I used to work for Russo Development. Ah. Understanding flickered across his face. And judging by the fact that you ended up at a law firm doing administrative work, I'm guessing it didn't end well. It's complicated. With Dante, it usually is. Dr. Reeves smiled. But whatever his reasons for bringing you here tonight, you should make the most of it. These opportunities don't come around often. He was right. Elena knew he was right. She just wished she understood what Dante Russo actually wanted from her. The evening wore on. Elena talked to more people than she could count, collected more business cards than seemed possible, and slowly began to feel like maybe this was real. Maybe she wasn't going to wake up and find out it was all some elaborate joke. Around 10:30, she found herself on the balcony, needing air and quiet. The city spread out below, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. The sounds of the party drifted out through the open doors behind her, laughter and music and the clink of glasses. She pulled out her phone, texted Mia. You're not going to believe this night. The response came immediately. Tell me everything. Elena smiled, started typing a response, then stopped when she sensed someone behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. You should be inside, Dante said, making connections, building relationships. I needed a minute. Elena turned to face him. This is a lot. Is it everything you expected? It's nothing like I expected. He moved to stand beside her at the balcony railing, looking out at the city. What did you expect? Honestly? I thought you'd invited me here to humiliate me, to remind me what happens to people who cross you. I don't need to humiliate people to make a point, Ms. Ward. There are much more effective ways to remind someone of their place. Like this? Like giving them back what was taken from them. He glanced at her. You did good work tonight. Those people in there, they're impressed. They should be. You're brilliant at what you do. You don't know that. I've read everything you published, every case study, every program report. I know exactly what you're capable of. His voice was matter of fact. The question is whether you know it. Elena's hands tightened on the railing. Why do you care? Because my cousin cost you 3 years of your career. 3 years of doing work that matters. 3 years of development and growth and impact. He turned to fully face her now. I can't give you those years back, but I can make sure you don't waste any more of them. This isn't about me, Elena said slowly. This is about your guilt. Perhaps. He didn't deny it. Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe. Elena met his eyes. What happens Monday morning when I go back to Morrison and Hale, and Vanessa Hale makes my life hell because she saw me here with you? Will you go back? The question hung in the air between them. Elena thought about her desk at Morrison and Hale, the coffee runs, the filing, the endless days of being invisible. She thought about Margaret Lawson's job offer, Dr. Reeves's invitation to consult, all the doors that had opened tonight. I don't know, she said honestly. Then let me make it easier. Dante pulled a card from his pocket. Not a business card, something else, heavier. This is my private number. If Vanessa or anyone else at that firm gives you problems, call me. I'll handle it. I don't need you to fight my battles. No, he agreed. You don't. But you also don't need to fight them alone. Not anymore. Elena took the card. Their fingers brushed, and she felt that electric warning again. This man was dangerous. Not because he wanted to hurt her, but because he could help her, and that kind of debt was its own kind of trap. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more honest than she'd heard it all night. Because 3 years ago, someone in my organization destroyed your career for doing the right thing. And when I found out, I was furious, not just at my cousin, but at myself, for not seeing it, for not protecting the people who worked for me, for being so focused on expansion and profit that I missed what was happening in my own house. He looked out at the city again. I fixed the immediate problem. My cousin went to prison. I restructured the entire oversight system. But you were gone, and I couldn't fix what happened to you until I saw your name on that list 3 weeks ago and realized I could give you this. One night. The right people. A chance to remember who you are. Elena's throat was tight. That's a lot of effort for guilt. It's not just guilt. He looked at her again, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't name. It's recognition. You're what people in my world should be and usually aren't. Smart, principled, willing to take risks for what's right. He paused. That's rare. Worth protecting, worth investing in. I'm not an investment. Everyone's an investment, Ms. Ward. The question is whether it's mutual. Before Elena could respond, voices drifted out from the balcony doors. People were leaving, calling for cars, saying their goodbyes. The gala was ending. Dante stepped back, creating distance. Professional distance. Your car is waiting whenever you're ready, he said. And Elena, he used her first name for the first time all night. Whatever you decide about Monday, decide for yourself. Not because of them, not because of me, because of what you actually want. He walked back inside, leaving her alone on the balcony with his private number in her hand and a future that suddenly looked completely different than it had that morning. Elena stayed there for a few more minutes, breathing in the cool air, trying to sort through everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed. Mia again. I'm literally dying. Call me. Elena smiled, headed back inside. The crowd had thinned significantly. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen, probably had left early, unable to stomach watching Elena's triumph. Marcus caught her eye from across the room and gave her a thumbs up. Dr. Reeves stopped her on her way to the exit. Elena, I meant what I said earlier. Call me. Let's talk about getting you back into this field properly. I will, Elena promised, and meant it. Margaret Lawson gave her a warm hug. Monday morning, don't forget. Elena collected her coat from the check, stepped out into the night. The same black car was waiting. As they pulled away from the museum, Elena looked back at the building, all lit up and beautiful. Through the windows, she could see the remaining guests, the glittering chandelier, the life she'd just stepped out of. She pulled out her phone, called Mia. Finally, her sister answered. Tell me everything right now or I'm disowning you. Elena laughed. And for the first time in 3 years, it didn't feel forced. She told Mia everything as the car drove through the city, about Dr. Reeves and Margaret Lawson and all the business cards, about Vanessa's face when Dante acknowledged Elena as his guest, about the job offers and the opportunities and the feeling of being seen again after so long invisible, and about Dante Russo, about his confession and his guilt and the strange calculated kindness of what he'd done. So he's either a secret softy with a conscience, Mia said when Elena finished, or he's playing a really long game and you're a piece on the board. Probably both, Elena said. Are you going to call Margaret Lawson on Monday? Elena looked down at the stack of business cards in her lap, at Dante's private number, separate from the rest. Yeah, she said. I think I am. Good. Mia's voice was fierce. Yeah. Because if you go back to that bullshit law firm after tonight, I'm staging an intervention. I can't just quit without having something lined up. Elena, you have like 6 somethings lined up. You just spent 4 hours being headhunted by every major player in international development. You're allowed to jump. She was right. Elena knew she was right, but knowing and doing were different things. The car pulled up to her apartment. Elena thanked the driver and headed inside, her head still spinning. She took off the dress carefully, hung it up, washed off the makeup, became herself again, or maybe became someone new. She wasn't sure yet. In bed, unable to sleep, she went through the business cards one more time, read the names, the titles, the possibilities. Then she picked up Dante's card. Just a phone number. No name, no title. A direct line to one of the most powerful men in the city. Elena set it on her nightstand and turned off the light. Tomorrow she'd figure out what to do with all of this. With the job offers and the opportunities and the strange, complicated gift Dante Russo had given her. Tonight, she just needed to sleep. But her mind kept replaying the evening. The way people had looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. The way Dante had looked at her, like he saw something worth investing in. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about what that might mean. Monday morning arrived like a storm Elena had been watching build on the horizon for days. She woke up at 5, gave up on sleep by 5:30, and spent an hour staring at her closet like the clothes might tell her what to do. Eventually, she settled on what she always wore. A simple gray dress, understated jewelry, flat shoes that wouldn't click too loudly on the office floors. The armor of invisibility. Except it didn't fit the same way anymore. When Elena looked at herself in the mirror, she kept seeing flashes of Saturday night, the woman in the elegant black dress who'd held conversations with ambassadors and nonprofit directors, who'd sat at Dante Russo's table like she belonged there. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone Elena had pretended to be for a few hours before reality reasserted itself. Her phone buzzed, a text from Mia. "Don't you dare chicken out on those calls. I will hunt you down." Elena smiled despite the knot in her stomach. She hadn't told Mia she was planning to go into the office at all. Her sister would have lost her mind. The subway was packed with the usual Monday crowd, people staring at phones, clutching coffee cups, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Elena found a spot near the door and held onto the pole, trying to breathe through the anxiety crawling up her throat. She'd made a decision last night, somewhere around 3 in the morning when sleep was clearly not happening. She would go in, work her normal day, and during lunch she'd call Margaret Lawson, set up a meeting, start the process of extracting herself from Morrison and Hale without burning bridges or making a scene, controlled, professional, safe. The elevator ride up to the Morrison and Hale offices felt longer than usual. Elena watched the numbers climb, each floor bringing her closer to whatever fresh hell Vanessa had prepared over the weekend. The receptionist looked up when Elena walked in. Did a visible double take. "Elena?" Lisa had been the front desk receptionist for 4 years and had never looked at Elena with anything other than mild disinterest. Now her eyes were wide. "Oh my God, is it true?" "Is what true?" "The gala, Dante Russo. Everyone's talking about it." Elena's stomach dropped. "How does everyone know about the gala?" "Are you kidding? It's all over social media. There are photos. You're in some of them." Lisa pulled out her phone, swiped a few times, then turned it around. Elena stared at the screen. It was a photo from Saturday night, her and Dante at the bar, him leaning in slightly, her holding that champagne glass, both of them in what looked like intense conversation. The caption read, "Mystery woman captures attention of Dante Russo at exclusive foundation gala. Sources say she's an international development expert with impressive credentials. Who is Elena Ward?" "There are like 6 different articles," Lisa said, scrolling. "Society pages, business blogs, even that lifestyle magazine did a piece. They're calling you the revelation of the season. Is it true you used to run programs in South America?" Elena couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was seeing. "Everyone's been talking about it since yesterday," Lisa continued. "Vanessa's been in Mr. Morrison's office for like an hour already. She looked furious." Of course she did. Elena forced herself to move, to walk past the reception desk and into the bullpen. Conversation stopped as she entered. People turned to stare. A few whispered to each other behind hands. Marcus was already at his desk. When he saw her, he stood up immediately and walked over. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Conference room, now." Elena followed him into one of the small conference rooms. Marcus closed the door, pulled the blinds. "Have you seen the coverage?" he asked. "Lisa just showed me." "It's everywhere, Elena. You're all over the society pages. They're digging into your background, finding out about your work in Colombia, the programs you built. He ran a hand through his hair.
Do you know what this means? That I'm going to have a really bad day? That you just became visible in a way that Vanessa can't ignore or dismiss?
You're not the invisible assistant anymore. You're the woman Dante Russo personally invited to his gala, the woman ambassadors and nonprofit directors want to hire. Marcus sat down on the edge of the table. Morrison's going to want to talk to you, probably offer you something to keep you here now that you're suddenly valuable. I don't want anything from Morrison. I know, but you need to be prepared. Vanessa's going to come at you hard. She's been telling everyone who'll listen that the whole thing was a publicity stunt, that you don't actually have the credentials people are claiming. Elena's hands clenched. She's calling me a liar? She's doing damage control. You embarrassed her Saturday night, whether you meant to or not, and Vanessa doesn't handle embarrassment well. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Ms. Ward, this is Catherine Mills from Russo Foundation. Mr. Russo would like to speak with you. I'm transferring you now. Elena's eyes went wide. She looked at Marcus, who raised his eyebrows. Then Dante's voice came through the line, low and controlled. I assume you've seen the media coverage? I just found out about it. My publicist may have helped facilitate some of the articles. I thought it would be useful for people to know who you are before the vultures started making up their own stories. He paused. I'm calling because I want to make you an offer. Elena's heart kicked. Mr. Russo, let me finish. I'm not offering you a job at Russo Development. That would defeat the purpose of Saturday night. But I do have connections with several international development organizations that are always looking for experienced consultants and program directors. I can make introductions, provide references, open doors. You've already opened doors. I've cracked them. You still have to walk through, but I can make the walk easier. His tone shifted slightly. I'm also aware that your current employers may not be thrilled about the attention you're receiving. If you need legal support or advice on how to navigate leaving that position, I have people who can help. Elena looked at Marcus, who was watching her with concern. Why are you doing this? She asked. I told you Saturday night. I'm correcting a mistake. This is more than correction. This is orchestration. Dante was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said finally. It is. Does that bother you? I don't know yet. Fair enough. The offer stands regardless. Call me if you need anything. And, Elena, don't let them make you smaller than you are. You've already spent 3 years doing that. He hung up before she could respond. Elena lowered the phone slowly. Marcus was staring at her. That was Dante Russo, she said unnecessarily. I gathered. What did he want? To help, I think. Elena sat down in one of the conference room chairs. Marcus, what the hell is happening? You're happening, he smiled slightly. You walked into that gala expecting to be humiliated, and instead you reminded everyone who you really are. Now they can't unsee it. That's powerful. That's terrifying. Yeah, probably both. A knock on the conference room door made them both jump. One of the senior partner's assistants stood there, looking uncomfortable. Elena? Mr. Morrison wants to see you in his office. Here it comes, Elena thought. She stood up, smoothed down her dress. Marcus caught her arm. Don't let him bully you into staying, he said quietly. You're worth more than this place ever valued you at. Elena nodded and followed the assistant down the hall to Richard Morrison's corner office. It was everything you'd expect from a senior partner. Mahogany furniture, leather chairs, law degrees framed on the wall, windows overlooking the city. Morrison sat behind his massive desk, fingers steepled. Vanessa stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression like carved ice. Elena, Morrison said, please, sit. Elena sat, kept her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. Morrison studied her for a long moment. I've been hearing some interesting things about you this weekend. Have you? Apparently you have quite the impressive background. International development work, program management, things you never mentioned when you were hired. I mentioned them in my initial interview, Elena said evenly. I was told the firm wasn't hiring for positions that would utilize that experience. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Morrison had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Yes, well, seems we may have underutilized your talents. I've been reviewing your file, and I think there may be opportunities for you to take on more substantive work. Perhaps assisting with some of our international clients, providing cultural and logistical insight. You want me to do more work for the same pay, Elena said. Morrison blinked. I'm offering you a chance to use your skills. After 3 years of filing and coffee runs, because now that I'm publicly associated with Dante Russo, suddenly I'm worth paying attention to. Elena, Vanessa cut in, her voice sharp. Mr. Morrison is trying to help you. You might want to show some gratitude. Elena looked at her, really looked at her, saw the fury barely contained behind that polished exterior, saw the woman who'd mocked her in the bullpen, who'd called her sweetheart like it was an insult, who'd spent 3 years treating her like furniture. You're right, Elena said quietly. I should be grateful. I should be thrilled that after 3 years of being invisible, I'm suddenly being offered the chance to do slightly less demeaning work for the same low pay while making senior partners look good to their international clients. Morrison's expression hardened. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being valued only after someone else recognized my worth first. Elena stood up. But that's okay, because I'm turning down your generous offer. Excuse me? Vanessa's voice could have cut glass. I'm resigning, effective 2 weeks from today. I'll finish any pending projects and train my replacement, but I'm done here. The words came out stronger than Elena felt. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed steady. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You're making a mistake. The legal field is small. Word gets around when someone leaves a prestigious firm like this. It won't look good. Neither will the headlines if I tell those journalists who've been calling exactly how Morrison and Hale treated an employee with my credentials for 3 years. Elena met his eyes. I'm sure the society pages would love that story. Woman with advanced degrees and international experience reduced to coffee service at elite law firm. Great optics. It was a bluff. Mostly, Elena had no intention of talking to journalists, but Morrison didn't know that. He exchanged a look with Vanessa. Some silent communication passed between them. 2 weeks, Morrison said finally. I'll expect complete discretion regarding your reasons for leaving. Of course. And you'll finish the Henderson filing before you go. It's due Friday. Fine. Elena turned to leave, got all the way to the door before Vanessa spoke. This won't end well for you. Elena paused, looked back. Maybe not, but it's ending. That's what matters. She walked out of Morrison's office with her head high and her knees weak, made it back to her desk before the full reality of what she'd just done hit her. She'd quit, actually quit, burned the bridge and walked away. Marcus appeared beside her desk seconds later. Please tell me you didn't just quit without having another job lined up. I just quit without having another job lined up. Elena, I have options. Margaret Lawson wants to talk. Doctor, Reeves mentioned consulting opportunities. I have 6 other business cards from Saturday night. She pulled them out of her purse, spread them on her desk like proof. And I have savings, enough for a few months while I figure things out. Marcus stared at the business cards, then at her. Then he started laughing. What? You. 3 days ago, you were terrified to go to a gala. Now you're quitting your job and betting on yourself. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of insane. Same thing. He grabbed his jacket. Come on, you're buying me coffee to celebrate your unemployment. I'm not unemployed for 2 weeks. Close enough. They went to the coffee shop down the street, the one Elena had been to 1,000 times to pick up orders for senior partners. But this time she was getting coffee for herself, sitting at one of the small tables by the window with Marcus across from her. So, Marcus said, what's your actual plan? Call Margaret Lawson during lunch. Set up a meeting about that director position. Reach out to Dr. Reeves about consulting work. Start building a real career again instead of just surviving. Elena took a sip of her coffee. It was good. She'd never actually ordered her own drink here before. And try not to panic about money. What about Dante Russo? What about him? Marcus gave her a look. Come on, the man orchestrated your entire career comeback in one night. He's calling you, offering to help, making sure you have support. That's not normal networking. I know. So what are you going to do about it? Elena thought about Dante's card on her nightstand, about his voice on the phone this morning, calm and controlled and offering exactly what she needed before she even knew she needed it. I don't know, she admitted. He scares me. Because he's dangerous? Because he sees me, really sees me. And I don't know what to do with that. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, maybe you don't have to do anything. Maybe you just let yourself be seen and figure out the rest as you go. That's terrifying. Yeah, but it's also living. They finished their coffee and headed back to the office. Elena spent the rest of the morning working on the Henderson filing, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed her through the bullpen. At noon, she took her phone to the bathroom, the only place with any privacy, and called Margaret Lawson. The woman answered on the second ring. Elena, I was hoping you'd call. I wanted to follow up about that director position you mentioned. Wonderful. Are you free Thursday afternoon? I'd love for you to come in, meet the team, see our facilities. We can discuss the role in detail. Thursday works. Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. What time? They set the appointment for 2 o'clock. When Elena hung up, she sat on the closed toilet lid for a minute, just breathing. This was real. This was actually happening. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Dr. Reeves. Would you be interested in consulting on a project in Ecuador? 3-month contract, good pay, meaningful work. Let me know. Elena stared at the message, then typed back. Very interested. Can we set up a call to discuss details? The response came immediately. How about tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? Perfect. 2 opportunities. 2 real, actual opportunities in the space of 30 minutes. Elena stood up, washed her hands, looked at herself in the mirror. She looked the same as she had that morning, gray dress, minimal makeup, pulled back hair. But something in her eyes was different, sharper, more alive. She went back to her desk and worked through the afternoon. Finished the Henderson filing by 4:30, sent it off to Morrison's assistant with a professional email. Started organizing her files, making notes about ongoing projects for whoever would replace her. Vanessa walked past her desk twice, didn't say a word, just looked at her with that ice-cold expression and kept walking. Elena didn't care anymore. Vanessa's approval or disapproval had exactly 0 impact on her life now. At 5:30, Marcus stopped by her desk. Drinks. I feel like this day deserves drinks. Rain check? I need to get home and start actually planning my next move. Fair. But Elena... He waited until she looked at him. I'm proud of you, just so you know. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in her chest. Thanks, Marcus. The subway ride home felt different, lighter somehow, despite the crush of evening commuters. Elena stood pressed against the door, watching the city blur past, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, terrifying hope. When she got home, Mia was already there, sprawled on the couch with takeout containers. I brought celebration food, her sister announced, because I knew you were going to do something dramatic today. Spill. Elena dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch beside her. I quit my job. Mia sat up so fast she almost knocked over the lo mein. You what? I quit. Gave 2 weeks' notice. Walked out of Morrison's office like a person with actual dignity. Holy shit! Mia grabbed her shoulders. Elena. Holy shit. Do you have another job? I have an interview Thursday, a consulting project possibly starting next month. 6 other leads from Saturday night. Elena pulled out her phone, showed Mia the text from Dr. Reeves. And Dante Russo called this morning offering to help with references and introductions. Mia read the text, then looked at her sister with something like awe. You're actually doing this. You're actually betting on yourself. I'm either doing this or having a complete breakdown. Not sure which yet. It's both. That's how you know it's working. Mia hugged her, hard and tight. I'm so fucking proud of you I could cry. But I won't because that's gross, and we have lo mein to eat. They spent the evening the way they had the night before the gala, talking, laughing, Mia telling stories that had nothing to do with work or stress or uncertainty, just sisters being sisters. Around 9, Elena's phone rang. Unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. Ms. Ward, this is Thomas Rivera from the Chronicle. The voice was brisk, professional. I'm writing a profile piece about the Russo Foundation gala, specifically focusing on some of the more interesting attendees. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about your background and your connection to Dante Russo. Elena's stomach clenched. I don't have any comment. I understand you worked for Russo Development several years ago. Can you tell me about— I don't have any comment, Elena repeated. Please don't call this number again. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. What was that? Mia asked. Journalist wants to write about me and Dante Russo. What did you say? No comment, but he's going to write something anyway. They always do. Elena set down the phone. This is what Dante meant this morning, about the vultures making up their own stories. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you trust him, Russo? I don't know. I don't know what his angle is. I don't know what he wants. Maybe he just wants what he said, to fix a mistake. Men like Dante Russo don't do anything without an angle. Maybe, Mia agreed, but maybe the angle is exactly what he told you. Recognition, investment, whatever he called it. She poked Elena's arm. You want my opinion? Do I have a choice? Nope. My opinion is that you're so used to people having shitty motives that you can't recognize when someone's actually trying to help you. Even if that help is calculated and manipulative and wrapped up in his own guilt, it's still help, and you're allowed to accept it. Elena thought about that. About Saturday night and the careful orchestration of her seat at Dante's table, the introductions to Dr. Reeves and Margaret Lawson and all the other people who mattered. About his phone call this morning, offering exactly what she needed. It was manipulation. Absolutely. He'd moved her around like a chess piece, positioned her perfectly to succeed, but he'd positioned her to succeed, not to fail, not to be humiliated, to reclaim what she'd lost. I think I need to call him, Elena said slowly. Dante Russo? Yeah. Now? Before I lose my nerve, Mia grinned. Do it. I want to hear this. Elena pulled out the card from her nightstand, stared at the number, then dialed before she could change her mind. He answered on the second ring. Elena. Not Ms. Ward. Elena. I got a call from a journalist, she said. Thomas Rivera from the Chronicle. I'll handle it. That's not why I'm calling. Silence on the other end. Then, why are you calling? Elena took a breath. To say thank you for Saturday night, for this morning, for giving me back something I didn't think I could get back. You're welcome. And to ask you to stop. Another pause, longer this time. Stop what? Helping, orchestrating, whatever you're doing. Elena stood up, started pacing. I appreciate it. I do. But I need to do this myself. I need to walk through those doors you've opened without wondering if it's only because you're behind me. I understand. Do you? Yes. His voice was quiet. You need to prove it to yourself. That you can succeed without my interference. I respect that. Really? Really. Though I reserve the right to make introductions if I think they'll be genuinely beneficial and not just me pulling strings. A hint of something that might have been amusement entered his tone. I'm not going to stop networking on your behalf entirely. That would be wasteful. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Fair enough. How did Morrison take your resignation? How did you— She stopped. Never mind. You know everything. Not everything, but I make it my business to know when people I'm invested in make significant career moves. I'm not your investment. We had this conversation Saturday night. Yes, you are. The question is whether it's mutual. He paused. Is it? Elena thought about that, about what it would mean to accept Dante Russo's help, his interest, his calculated support. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Ask me again in a month. I will. She could hear the smile in his voice. Good luck with your interview Thursday. Margaret Lawson runs a solid organization. You'd be good there. How do you know about Thursday? I told you. I make it my business to know. He hung up before she could respond. Elena lowered the phone and looked at Mia, who was watching her with raised eyebrows. So, her sister said. That was interesting. He's insufferable. He's invested in you. Same thing. Mia threw a fortune cookie at her. You like him. I don't even know him. You like that he sees you,
That's not the same as liking him, but it's something. Mia cracked open her own fortune cookie. Also, he's clearly into you. He's not. Elena stopped. That's ridiculous. Is it? Powerful man orchestrates entire evening to resurrect your career, offers ongoing support, calls you by your first name, tracks your interview schedule? Mia read her fortune, made a face, tossed it aside. That's either professional interest or personal interest, and I'm betting it's both. You're reading too much into this. And you're not reading enough. Mia stood up, started gathering the takeout containers. But whatever, you've got bigger things to worry about, like Thursday's interview and not having a panic attack about quitting your job. She was right. Elena had 2 weeks to finish at Morrison and Hale, prepare for her interview with Margaret Lawson, set up the call with Dr. Reeves, and figure out what the hell she was going to do with the rest of her life. The next 2 days passed in a blur. Elena worked her notice period with quiet efficiency, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her through the office. Vanessa avoided her entirely, which was fine. Perfect, actually. Marcus kept stopping by her desk to check in, make sure she was okay. Other people, associates she'd barely spoken to in 3 years, suddenly wanted to talk to her, ask her about the gala, about her background, about what she was doing next. Elena kept her answers polite and vague. She didn't owe them explanations. Tuesday morning, she had her call with Dr. Reeves. He outlined the Ecuador project, a 3-month consulting contract to help redesign a rural education initiative. Good pay, meaningful work. Exactly the kind of thing she used to do. I'd need to start mid-May, Dr. Reeves said. Is that feasible for you? Elena thought about her 2 weeks at Morrison and Hale, about her savings, about the interview Thursday. Yes, she said. That's feasible. Excellent. I'll send over the contract details. Welcome back to the field, Elena. Welcome back. The words stayed with her through the rest of Tuesday, through Wednesday's mounting pile of work as she finished projects and organized files, through Wednesday night when she couldn't sleep, mind spinning with possibilities and fears. Thursday morning, she stood in front of her closet again. But this time, she didn't reach for the gray dress and flat shoes. She chose a navy blue dress with clean lines, professional but not submissive, heels that added 2 inches, jewelry that was simple but deliberate, the armor of someone who knew her worth. Mia stopped by at noon to take pictures and give her a pep talk. You're going to walk in there and they're going to realize they'd be idiots not to hire you, her sister said firmly. And if they don't, they're idiots and you move on to the next opportunity. But they won't be idiots because you're brilliant and they need you more than you need them. Elena hugged her. Thank you. Go get it. The International Development Council offices were in a newer building downtown, all glass and steel and open spaces. Elena checked in at reception, was directed to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Margaret Lawson met her at the door with a warm smile. Elena, wonderful to see you again. Come in. Meet the team. The next 2 hours were intense. Margaret walked her through the organization's structure, their current projects, their challenges and goals. Introduced her to the program coordinators, the financial director, the field operations manager. They asked Elena about her experience, her approach to program design, her philosophy on community engagement and sustainable development. And Elena answered, not with the careful, measured responses she'd given at Morrison and Hale interviews, but with the confidence of someone who'd actually done this work, who knew what worked and what didn't, who had stories and experience and hard-won knowledge. She could feel the shift in the room, the way people leaned forward when she talked, the way they asked follow-up questions, engaged with her ideas, treated her like a colleague instead of a candidate. This was what it felt like to be valued. At the end of the interview, Margaret walked her back to the elevator. That was impressive, she said. The team was very enthusiastic. I have one more candidate to interview tomorrow, but between you and me, she smiled, I think we found our director. Elena's heart jumped. Really? Really? Expect a call early next week. We'll discuss salary, benefits, start date. But yes, I want you on this team. They shook hands. Elena stepped into the elevator feeling like she was floating. She made it to the ground floor before she started crying. Just a little. Just enough to smudge her mascara and make her laugh at herself. Outside, she pulled out her phone, started to call Mia, then stopped.
She scrolled to Dante's number instead. Hit call. He answered immediately. How did it go? She wants to hire me, pending one more interview, but she basically said the job is mine. Congratulations. He sounded genuinely pleased. When do you start? She'll call next week with details, but probably early May. Good timing. Gives you a few weeks to decompress and prepare. A pause. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Like I might throw up. Dante laughed. It was a good sound, warm, real. That's how you know it matters. Yeah. Elena wiped her eyes. Thank you. I know you said you'd stop helping, but thank you for Saturday night, for putting me at that table. I wouldn't have this without you. You would have, eventually. You're too good not to be recognized. His voice softened slightly. I just accelerated the timeline. Still, thank you. You're welcome. Now go celebrate. You earned this. He hung up. Elena stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, feeling something close to happy for the first time in years. She called Mia, told her everything. Her sister screamed so loud, Elena had to pull the phone away from her ear. We're celebrating tonight, Mia declared. Fancy dinner, my treat. You just landed a real job doing real work that actually matters. That deserves champagne and overpriced pasta. They went to a restaurant they couldn't quite afford, ordered wine they definitely couldn't afford, and spent 3 hours laughing and planning and imagining what Elena's life was about to become. Walking home that night, slightly buzzed and completely happy, Elena felt like she'd finally stepped back into herself. The person she used to be before Morrison and Hale, before the quiet erosion of self-worth, before she'd learned to disappear. That person was still here, had always been here. She'd just forgotten for a while. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your new position. Congratulations. You deserve every success. VH. Elena stared at the message. Vanessa Hale, texting her congratulations. It was probably killing her to do it, but she'd done it anyway. Elena typed back. Thank you, short, professional, done. She deleted the thread and kept walking. 2 weeks later, on her last day at Morrison and Hale, Elena cleaned out her desk with no fanfare. No party, no tearful goodbyes, just Marcus helping her carry boxes to her car and giving her a hug that lasted a little too long. Don't be a stranger, he said. I won't. And Elena, for what it's worth, watching you these last few weeks has been inspiring. You remembered who you are. That takes guts. She drove home with her boxes in the trunk and her future wide open in front of her. And when she got home, there was a package waiting. Heavy box, expensive packaging, no return address. Inside was a leather portfolio. Beautiful, professional, expensive. The kind of thing a director of international programs would carry. And a note, in bold, aggressive handwriting she recognized from 3-year-old signatures on development contracts. For your next chapter. Dr. Elena ran her fingers over the leather. Smooth, perfect, exactly right. She pulled out her phone, texted Dante. Thank you for the gift. It's perfect. The response came quickly. You're welcome. Now go build something worth carrying it for. Elena smiled, set the portfolio on her table, looked around her small apartment, the one she'd been able to afford on an assistant's salary, the one she'd probably be able to move out of soon with a director's pay. Everything was changing. She was changing, and for the first time in 3 years, that didn't scare her. It felt like coming home. 3 months into her new position, Elena stood in a conference room at the International Development Council offices and realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to be exhausted in a good way. The kind of exhaustion that came from 12-hour days spent designing programs that would actually help people, from negotiations with government officials and community leaders, from the mental gymnastics of budgets and timelines and coordinating teams across 3 countries. She loved every minute of it. Elena, what do you think about the timeline for Phase 2? She looked up from her laptop. Margaret Lawson sat at the head of the table, along with the field operations manager and 2 program coordinators. They were planning the expansion of their primary education initiative in Guatemala, and everyone was looking at Elena for answers. Because she was the director, because her opinion mattered, because they'd learned over the past 3 months that when Elena Ward said something would work or wouldn't work, she was usually right. I think we're being overly optimistic, Elena said. The rainy season starts in May. That's going to delay construction by at least 6 weeks, maybe 8. We should push phase 2 to July and use the delay to focus on teacher training and curriculum development. Margaret nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Thoughts, team? They discussed it for another 20 minutes before agreeing on Elena's recommendation. As the meeting wrapped up, Margaret caught Elena's arm. Good call on the timeline. I was about to approve the original schedule before you flagged the issue. That's what I'm here for. You're doing exceptional work, Elena. The board is very impressed. Margaret smiled. We're lucky to have you. Elena felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the one that came from being valued for what she could actually do. Thanks. That means a lot. Back at her desk, Elena found 3 emails waiting. One from Dr. Reeves about the Ecuador project. She'd be flying out in 2 weeks to finalize the program redesign. One from a colleague in Colombia asking for her input on a new initiative. And one from an address she didn't recognize with the subject line, media request. She almost deleted it, then opened it instead. Miss Ward, I'm producing a documentary about women in international development. Your work has been recommended by several colleagues as exemplary. Would you be interested in participating? Brief interview discussing your approach and philosophy. Let me know. Sarah Chen, Frontline Productions. Elena stared at the email. A documentary. About her work. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now people wanted to interview her. It still felt surreal sometimes. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Dinner tonight? I have news. Elena smiled and typed back. Your place or mine? Mine. 7 p.m. Bring wine. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of emails and project updates. At 6, Elena packed up her new leather portfolio, the one Dante had sent her, which she used every day, and headed out. The commute to Mia's studio apartment took 40 minutes. Her sister answered the door with a grin that could only mean trouble. Okay, what's the news? Elena asked, handing over the wine. I got a commission, a big one. Fashion magazine wants me to shoot their spring campaign. Mia was practically vibrating with excitement. It's 3 weeks of work and enough money to actually pay my rent for 6 months. Mia, that's amazing. Elena hugged her tight. You deserve this. Your work is incredible. Says the woman who's basically saving the world one education program at a time. Mia pulled back, studied her sister's face. You look tired. Good tired, but still tired. I am tired, but I'm happy. Elena sat down on the couch. Is this what having an actual career feels like? Being exhausted, but satisfied? I think so. Though I wouldn't know. I'm usually just exhausted. Mia poured the wine, handed Elena a glass. How's the Ecuador project coming? Good. Complicated, but good. I fly out in 2 weeks to meet with the local team and finalize everything. Excited? Terrified. It's been 3 years since I did field work. What if I've forgotten how? Mia rolled her eyes. You haven't forgotten how to breathe, have you? It's the same thing. You know this work. You're good at it. Stop questioning yourself. When did you become the wise sister? I've always been the wise sister. You just finally started listening. Mia took a sip of wine. So, have you heard from him? Elena didn't need to ask who she meant. Dante? Not since the portfolio. That was 3 months ago. And you haven't reached out? Why would I? He said he'd stop helping. I said I needed to do this myself. That was the deal. The deal was he'd stop orchestrating. Doesn't mean you can't talk to the man. Mia gave her a look. You're allowed to maintain the connection, you know. He clearly wants to stay in touch. How do you know that? Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have sent you a $1,000 portfolio with a personal note. He would have just moved on to his next project or investment or whatever he calls people. Elena thought about that. She'd thought about Dante more than she wanted to admit over the past 3 months. Wondered how he was doing, whether he'd found other people to orchestrate career comebacks for, whether he ever thought about her. She'd almost called him a dozen times, always stopped herself because what would she even say? Thank you again? I'm doing well. I miss our 3 conversations. It was stupid. She barely knew the man. You're overthinking again, Mia said. I can literally see it happening on your face. I don't know what you want me to do. Call him, text him, invite him to coffee. I don't care. Just stop pretending you don't want to talk to him. I never said I wanted to talk to him. You didn't have to. Mia stood up, headed to the kitchen. Now come help me figure out what we're ordering for dinner, because I'm too excited about this commission to cook. They spent the evening the way they always did, eating takeout, talking about everything and nothing, Mia showing Elena photos from her latest shoots. Around 10, Elena headed home, pleasantly buzzed and feeling lighter than she had in days. In her apartment, she pulled out her phone, stared at Dante's number. Then before she could overthink it, she texted, "How are you?" Simple, neutral, not overthinking it at all. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "I'm well. How's the new position treating you?" "Busy." "Good. I'm heading to Ecuador in 2 weeks. The consulting project with Dr. Reeves? You're still tracking my schedule. I'm still invested in your success."
How was the interview with Frontline Productions? Elena stared at her phone. How do you know about that? I just got that email today.
Sarah Chen is a friend. I may have mentioned you when she was looking for interview subjects. Of course you did. You sound annoyed. I sound tired. A pause. Then, coffee tomorrow? I promise not to orchestrate anything, just coffee. Elena's finger hovered over the keyboard. She should say no, should maintain the distance she'd insisted on 3 months ago, but Mia's voice echoed in her head. You're allowed to maintain the connection. Okay. Where? He sent an address. A cafe in Midtown, neutral territory. 10 a.m.? I'll be there. Elena set down her phone and tried not to analyze what she'd just agreed to. It was just coffee, with a man who'd changed the trajectory of her entire life, who still apparently kept tabs on her career, who made her nervous in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. Just coffee. She didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, Elena changed clothes 3 times before settling on something professional but casual. Dark jeans, a cream blouse, a blazer that made her feel put together without trying too hard. She arrived at the cafe 5 minutes early and immediately regretted it because now she had to sit there and wait and feel anxious. Dante walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. He looked different than he had at the gala, less formal in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater, but no less commanding. People noticed him when he entered. Hard not to. He had that presence that made you pay attention whether you wanted to or not. His eyes found her immediately. He smiled, something warm and genuine, and walked over. Elena, you look well. So do you. She stood, and they did that awkward half-hug thing that people do when they're not sure what level of familiarity they're at. Thanks for meeting me. Thank you for texting. He sat down across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. A server appeared, took their orders. When she left, Dante leaned back in his chair, studying Elena with that unreadable expression. You're different, he said finally. Different how? More settled, confident, like you've remembered who you're supposed to be. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. That's a generous assessment. It's an accurate one. He paused as the server returned with their coffees. Tell me about Ecuador. What's the project? So she did. Told him about the rural education initiative, the challenges they were facing, the redesign work she'd be doing. He asked good questions, the kind that showed he actually understood development work, not just the surface level stuff. You've done your homework, Elena said. I told you. I'm invested in your success. That means understanding what you actually do. He took a sip of coffee. How's Margaret treating you? Like a valued colleague. It's almost unsettling after 3 years of being treated like furniture. You'll get used to it. Will I? Elena looked at him directly. Or will I always be waiting for the other shoe to drop? For someone to remember I'm not actually supposed to be here? Dante's expression softened. You're supposed to be exactly where you are. You earned that position. Your work earned it, not my introduction. But the introduction helped. It opened a door. You walked through it. Those are different things. He set down his cup. Elena, you need to stop attributing your success to other people. Yes, I put you in front of the right people at the gala, but everything that happened after, the interviews, the job offer, the work you've been doing, that's all you. Elena wanted to believe him. Part of her did believe him. The other part kept waiting for proof that she'd somehow fooled everyone into thinking she was competent.
I got offered a documentary interview, she said, changing the subject. Sarah Chen from Frontline Productions. I know. I recommended you. Why? Because your approach to community-based development is innovative, and your work should be documented. Also because you're articulate and thoughtful, and people should hear what you have to say. He smiled slightly. And because I knew it would annoy you that I was still interfering. Despite everything, Elena laughed. It does annoy me. Good. Keeps you sharp. They talked for another hour. About her work, his foundation projects, the city, everything and nothing. It was easy. Comfortable in a way Elena hadn't expected. And unsettling because comfortable meant dangerous. Meant letting her guard down with a man who was still fundamentally unknowable. Around 11:30, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned slightly. I have to go. Business emergency. He stood, pulled out his wallet. I can get my own coffee, Elena said. I know you can. Let me get it anyway. He dropped cash on the table, more than enough to cover both drinks and a generous tip. Elena, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy with how things turned out? The question caught her off guard. She thought about it, really thought about it. Yeah, she said finally. I think I am. For the first time in years, I'm doing work that matters. With people who value me, I'm happy. Something shifted in his expression. Satisfaction, maybe. Or relief. Good, he said quietly. That's good. He left before she could respond, disappearing into the midtown crowd like he'd never been there. Elena sat at the table for another 10 minutes, finishing her coffee, trying to figure out what had just happened. It had felt like more than coffee. Like Dante had needed to see for himself that she was okay. That his intervention had worked the way he'd intended. Like he cared. That thought stayed with her for the rest of the day. Through meetings and emails and project planning. Through the subway ride home and dinner with Mia, who demanded to know every detail of the coffee meetup. He cares about you, Mia said definitively. That's not professional interest. That's personal. You don't know that. I absolutely know that. Men don't orchestrate career comebacks for women they're not interested in, and they definitely don't keep tabs on their schedules and recommend them for documentary interviews. Maybe he does this for everyone. Maybe this is just how he operates. Mia gave her a look that clearly said she thought Elena was an idiot. Fine. Believe whatever you want. But when he eventually makes a move, don't act surprised. Elena didn't think Dante Russo would make a move. He was too controlled for that, too calculated. But part of her wondered what she'd do if he did. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. Elena finalized her Ecuador preparations, did the documentary interview with Sarah Chen, which went better than expected, and tried not to think about Dante Russo more than was reasonable. She failed at that last part. He texted her occasionally, nothing substantial, just checking in, asking how prep was going, sending her an article he thought she'd find interesting about education policy. Small touches. Maintaining the connection without pushing. It drove her crazy. The night before her flight to Ecuador, Elena was packing when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then did. Ms. Ward, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Metro Police Department. I'm calling because your name came up in connection with an investigation we're conducting into Russo development operations from 3 to 4 years ago. Elena's blood went cold. What kind of investigation? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I'd like to ask you some questions about your time with the company and the complaint you filed in 2023. Are you available to come in tomorrow? I'm flying to Ecuador tomorrow. When do you return? 3 weeks? The detective was quiet for a moment. That's fine. We can schedule something for when you get back. This is just preliminary inquiry, nothing urgent. They set a date for mid-June. When Elena hung up, her hands were shaking. She called Dante immediately. He answered on the first ring. Elena? What's wrong? I just got a call from a police detective. About Russo development. About the complaint I filed 3 years ago. The words tumbled out too fast. They want to interview me when I get back from Ecuador. What the hell is going on? Dante swore. Quietly, but with enough vehemence that Elena knew this was bad. I'll call you back in 10 minutes, he said. Don't talk to anyone else. He hung up. Elena sat on her bed, surrounded by half-packed suitcases, trying to breathe normally. This was what she'd been afraid of. That the past would catch up.
that getting involved with Dante Russo, even peripherally, even accidentally, would blow up in her face. Her phone rang. Dante. Okay, he said without preamble. Here's what's happening. The district attorney is building a case against several former Russo development executives for financial crimes. My cousin's conviction opened up a larger investigation into the company's practices during that period. They're interviewing everyone who worked there, everyone who filed complaints, everyone who might have information. Am I in trouble? No, you're a witness. You did everything right 3 years ago. But Elena, his voice got harder. They're going to ask you about me, about whether I knew what was happening, whether I was involved. Were you? The question hung between them. No, Dante said finally. I wasn't. I was focused on expansion, on building the business, and I missed what was happening under my watch. That's my failure. But I didn't know, and I wasn't involved in any criminal activity. Will they believe that? I don't know. Probably. My lawyers are confident, but the investigation is going to be messy and public, and it's going to drag up everything from that time period. He paused. Including what happened to you. Elena closed her eyes. Great. I'm sorry. I should have warned you this might happen. I knew the investigation was ongoing. I didn't think they'd reach out to you this soon. What do I do? You talk to them. You tell the truth. You explain what you saw, what you reported, what happened after. You have nothing to hide. His voice softened slightly. And if you want, I can have my attorneys present during your interview. They can make sure the questions stay appropriate. Won't that look like you're trying to control what I say? Probably. But I'd rather look controlling than let you walk into an interrogation without support. Elena thought about that, about what it would mean to accept his help again, about whether she could trust him when the stakes were this high. Let me think about it, she said. I need to process this. Okay, but Elena, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. I would never ask you to lie for me. If they ask if I knew about the financial crimes, you tell them the truth. I didn't. But if you have any doubts about that, any concerns, you say so. I won't hold it against you. Why would you say that? Because your integrity is worth more than my reputation, and because I meant what I said 3 months ago. You're not my investment to control. You're your own person. Act like it. He hung up before she could respond. Elena sat there for a long time, phone in hand, trying to sort through the mess of emotions tangling in her chest. Fear, anger, confusion, and underneath it all, something that felt uncomfortably like trust. She finished packing mechanically, tried to sleep, failed. At 4 a.m, she texted Mia. Police called. Investigation into Russo development. They want to interview me when I get back. The response came immediately. What? Are you okay? I don't know. I'm scared. Do you need me to come over? No. I'm leaving for the airport in 3 hours. Just needed to tell someone. Does Dante know? Yeah. He offered to have his lawyers present during my interview. Are you going to accept? Elena stared at the question. I don't know. Do you trust him? That was the real question, wasn't it? Did she trust Dante Russo? A man she barely knew. A man whose intervention had changed her life. A man who'd admitted he'd failed to see criminal activity in his own company. I think so, she typed finally. I think I do. Then trust your gut. And Elena, be careful. Men with power are complicated. I know. I love you. Call me when you land. I will. Elena set down her phone and watched the sky slowly lighten outside her window. In a few hours, she'd be on a plane to Ecuador. To work she loved, to the career she'd fought to reclaim. And in 3 weeks, she'd come back to a police investigation that could blow up everything. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. At 6, she called an Uber to the airport, went through security in a daze, boarded the plane and stared out the window as they took off, watching the city disappear below. Somewhere down there, Dante Russo was dealing with his own version of this mess, probably with a team of lawyers and carefully calculated strategies. And she was flying to Ecuador to do field work for the first time in 3 years. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. The Ecuador project consumed her for the next 3 weeks. Long days spent in rural communities, working with teachers and administrators and local leaders, redesigning curriculum, training staff, solving problems that ranged from logistical nightmares to cultural misunderstandings. It was hard, exhausting, sometimes frustrating, and it reminded Elena why she'd gotten into this work in the first place. There was something about watching a teacher's face light up when they understood a new pedagogical approach, about seeing kids engage with material that actually connected to their lives, about building something that would last beyond her presence. This mattered. This was real. The investigation waiting for her back home felt distant, abstract, like something happening to someone else. But at night, lying in her small hotel room, it crept back in. What would she tell the detective? What did she actually know about Dante's involvement or lack thereof? She'd filed a complaint about financial irregularities. She'd been fired. That was all factual. Everything else was interpretation, assumption, trust, or lack of it. Elena texted with Dante a few times during those 3 weeks. Brief updates on the project. He asked good questions, seemed genuinely interested, never mentioned the investigation. She didn't either. On her last night in Ecuador, Dr. Reeves took her to dinner at a small restaurant in Quito. "You did exceptional work," he said over empanadas and wine. "The team is thrilled. I'm thrilled. And the local administrators are already asking when you can come back." "Really?" "Really. You have a gift for this, Elena, for seeing what communities need and building programs that actually serve them." He raised his glass. "To getting you back in the field where you belong." Elena clinked glasses with him, feeling that familiar warmth of recognition, of being valued for what she could do. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "How do you know Dante Russo?" Dr. Reeves's eyebrows rose. "That's a sudden topic change." "I'm curious. You were at his table at the gala. You clearly know him. What's your read on him?" Dr. Reeves was quiet for a moment, swirling his wine. "Dante is complicated. He came from nothing, and I mean nothing. Built an empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and a willingness to take risks that would terrify most people. He's made enemies. He's made questionable decisions. But he's also done genuine good through his foundation work. Do you trust him?" "Depends on what you mean by trust. Would I trust him with my money?" "Yes." "Would I trust him to keep his word on a business deal?" "Yes." "Would I trust him with secrets that could destroy me?" Dr. Reeves smiled slightly. "That's a different question." "What would you answer?" "I'd answer that Dante Russo is loyal to the people he values. And when he values someone, he protects them, sometimes in ways they don't ask for, sometimes in ways that cross lines." He looked at Elena directly. "Why are you asking?" "There's a police investigation into Russo development from when I worked there. They want to interview me." Understanding flickered across Dr. Reeves's face. "About the complaint you filed." "You know about that?" "Dante told me. When he asked me to look for your contact information 3 months before the gala, he explained what had happened, what his cousin had done, how you'd paid the price for doing the right thing." Dr. Reeves set down his glass. "That's why he invited you to the gala, you know. Not just guilt, but recognition. He saw what it cost you to have integrity. He wanted to give you back what was taken. And now I might have to testify about whether he knew his cousin was stealing." "Did he?" Elena thought about that, about Dante's anger when he'd explained what had happened, about the cousin serving 8 years in federal prison, about everything she'd seen in the past 4 months. "No," she said. "I don't think he did." "Then tell them that. Tell them the truth. That's all you can do." They finished dinner. Elena flew home the next day, exhausted and wired and dreading what came next. Mia picked her up from the airport with coffee and a hug. "You look like hell," her sister said affectionately. "I feel like hell, but I also feel good. Is that possible?" "Totally possible. That's called doing meaningful work." Mia grabbed one of Elena's bags. "So, interview with the cops is tomorrow, right?" "Yeah, 10 a.m. Did you decide about Dante's lawyers?" Elena had thought about it for 3 weeks, had gone back and forth a dozen times. "No lawyers," she said finally. "I'm going to tell them what I know. I don't need representation for that." Mia nodded. "Okay, but I'm coming with you. You're not doing this alone." "You don't have to." "I'm coming. Don't argue." They drove to Elena's apartment in comfortable silence. That night, Elena tried to prepare for the interview. Went over what she remembered from 3 years ago, what she'd seen, what she'd reported, what happened after. The facts were simple, her interpretation was clear, but she still couldn't sleep. The next morning, Mia showed up at 8 with bagels and determination. They took the subway to the precinct together, Mia maintaining a steady stream of chatter that Elena was grateful for, even if she couldn't quite focus on it. Detective Martinez was waiting for them in an interview room. Middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Miss Ward, thank you for coming in. Who's this?" "My sister Mia. She's here for support." "That's fine. She'll need to wait outside during the interview, but she can be nearby." Martinez gestured to a chair. "Please sit. This shouldn't take long. We just have some questions about your time at Russo Development." Elena sat. Mia squeezed her shoulder once before leaving the room. Martinez pulled out a file folder. "Let's start with when you were hired and what your position was." For the next 90 minutes, Elena answered questions, described what she'd seen in the filing systems, explained the discrepancies that had caught her attention, walked through the process of filing her complaint and what happened after. "And Dante Russo," Martinez said. "Did you ever interact with him during your employment?" "No, I never met him, never spoke to him. I was too low in the hierarchy." "Did anyone ever mention that he was aware of the financial irregularities?" "No, the opposite, actually. When I was let go, my supervisor said it was restructuring. Nothing about Mr. Russo being involved in any decisions." "You filed your complaint through the company's internal reporting system. Do you know if it ever reached Dante Russo?" "I didn't at the time, but he told me later that his cousin intercepted it, that he didn't see my complaint until 6 months after I was gone." Martinez's eyebrows rose. "He told you this? When?" "At his gala, 4 months ago. He invited me because he'd finally found out what happened and wanted to apologize, I guess, for his company's failure to protect me." "Interesting." Martinez made notes. "And you believed him? That he didn't know?" Elena thought about that, about every interaction she'd had with Dante, about the anger in his voice when he talked about his cousin, about the way he'd orchestrated her comeback not for his benefit, but for hers. "Yes," she said. "I believed him." "Why?" "Because if he'd known, he would have stopped it. That's who he is. He controls everything in his world. He doesn't tolerate people stealing from him or undermining his operations. If he'd known his cousin was skimming $3 million, he would have dealt with it immediately." Martinez studied her face. "You seem very certain of that for someone who never interacted with him during your employment. I've gotten to know him since then. He's complicated, but he's not a liar about things that matter to him, and his company's integrity matters to him." More questions, more details. Martinez pushed on timeline inconsistencies, on exactly who Elena had reported to, on whether she'd ever seen evidence that higher-level executives knew what was happening. Elena answered everything honestly, said when she didn't know or couldn't remember. Finally, Martinez closed her folder. "Okay, I think that's everything we need for now. We may follow up if we have additional questions. Am I in any trouble?" "No. You did exactly what you were supposed to do 3 years ago. You're a witness, nothing more." Martinez stood. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Ward." Elena walked out of the interview room on shaky legs. Mia jumped up from the waiting area bench. "How bad?" "Not bad. I think. I don't know." Elena headed for the exit, needing air and space. "I told them the truth, that's all I could do." Outside, she pulled out her phone, texted Dante. "Just finished with the detective. I told them what I know, that you weren't involved, that I believe you didn't know what your cousin was doing." The response came within seconds. "Thank you. Are you okay?" "I will be. Need to process. If you need anything, call me." Elena stared at that message, at the easy offer of support from a man who had every reason to be worried about what she'd told the police, but instead was asking if she was okay. "You like him," Mia said, reading over her shoulder. "Don't start." "I'm not starting. I'm observing. You like him. He clearly likes you. At some point, one of you is going to have to do something about that." "There's nothing to do. He's—" Elena gestured vaguely. "Him. And I'm me. We exist in completely different worlds." "You existed in different worlds 4 months ago. Now you're both doing international development work and attending the same events and texting each other about police investigations. The worlds aren't that different anymore. Elena wanted to argue, couldn't find the words. Because Mia was right. Somewhere over the past 4 months, the distance between Elena's world and Dante's had collapsed. She was no longer the invisible assistant. He was no longer the untouchable CEO. They were just two people who kept finding reasons to stay in each other's orbits. And that was terrifying. Because Elena knew what happened to people in Dante Russo's orbit. They got pulled in, became part of his plans, lost autonomy even as they gained opportunity. She'd fought too hard to reclaim her independence to lose it now. But walking away felt impossible too. "Let's go home," she said to Mia. "I need to sleep for about 12 hours. "Deal, but this conversation isn't over." It wasn't. Elena knew it wasn't. But for now, she was too tired to think about Dante Russo and what he meant to her life and what she wanted from whatever this was between them. For now, she just needed to rest. The news broke 3 days later. Elena was at her desk when Margaret rushed over, phone in hand, face pale. "Have you seen this?" Elena took the phone. A headline from the business section. "Former Russo development executives indicted in $8 million fraud scheme. CEO Dante Russo cleared of all charges." Her stomach dropped as she read. The district attorney had concluded their investigation. 5 former executives indicted, including Dante's cousin. Dante himself explicitly cleared. The investigation found no evidence he'd known about or participated in the financial crimes. But the article didn't stop there. It detailed the scheme, the victims, the money trail. And buried in the 5th paragraph, a single line that made Elena's blood run cold. The fraud was initially discovered through an internal complaint filed by a junior employee who was subsequently terminated. They didn't use her name, but they didn't need to. "That's you, isn't it?" Margaret said quietly. Elena couldn't speak, just nodded. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Was she? Elena wasn't sure. The vindication felt hollow. Yes, she'd been right. Yes, her complaint had led to justice. But it had taken 3 years, cost her career, and now it was public knowledge that she'd been the whistleblower who got fired for doing the right thing. "I need a minute," Elena managed. She grabbed her phone and headed for the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and tried to breathe through the panic clawing at her throat. Her phone buzzed. "Dante, I just saw the article. I'm sorry they included details about the internal complaint. My lawyers are looking into whether they can get a retraction on that paragraph." Elena typed back with shaking hands. "Don't. It's the truth. I'm just trying to process. Can I call you?" "Not yet. I need time." She sat there for 15 minutes before pulling herself together and heading back to her desk. People were trying not to stare. Failing. Marcus had sent her a message. "Holy shit. You okay?" Even Vanessa had texted. "Saw the news. For what it's worth, you were right all along. Sorry I didn't see it." Elena didn't respond to any of them, just put her head down and worked until Margaret gently suggested she take the rest of the day off. "You've been through enough," her boss said kindly. "Go home. Process. Come back when you're ready." Elena didn't argue, grabbed her things and left. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright, the city too loud. She walked without direction, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. Relief that it was over. Anger that it had taken so long, grief for the 3 years she'd lost, pride that she'd been right to report it, and underneath everything else, a strange, aching exhaustion. Her phone rang. Dante again. This time she answered. "Are you somewhere safe?" he asked immediately. "I'm walking, downtown. I don't know where I'm going." "Give me your location. I'll send a car." "I don't need—" "Elena, please, let me help." Something in his voice made her stop fighting. She sent him her location and stood on the corner, watching traffic pass until a black car pulled up 10 minutes later. The driver opened the door. "Miss Ward, Mr. Russo asked me to take you wherever you want to go." "I don't know where I want to go." "Mr. Russo suggested his office, if you're willing. He'd like to talk to you. But if you'd prefer to go home or anywhere else, I can take you there." Elena should have said home, should have maintained distance and independence. Instead, she said, "His office is fine." The drive took 20 minutes. Russo Foundation headquarters was in a newer building with too much glass and marble. The receptionist was expecting her, led her to a private elevator that required a key card to access the top floor. Dante's office was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, modern, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her monthly salary. And Dante himself standing by the windows with his phone pressed to his ear. He looked up when she entered, said something brief into the phone, and hung up. "Thank you for coming." He gestured to the sitting area, leather couches, a low table. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine." They sat. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. "I'm sorry," Dante said finally. "About the article. About your name being dragged back into this. I tried to keep the complaint details confidential, but it's public record. Anyone digging through the investigation would find it." Elena looked at him directly. "Did you know they'd publish those details?"
No, if I had, I would have warned you. Would you have tried to stop it? Yes, not because I have anything to hide, but because you deserved privacy. You've already paid enough for doing the right thing. Elena believed him. That was the strange part. After everything, she actually believed him.
"It's over now," she said. "The investigation, the indictments. Your name is cleared. My complaint is vindicated. Everyone gets closure." "Do you have closure?" The question landed harder than it should have. Did she? Elena looked out the windows at the city spreading below. Thought about the past 6 months, the gala, the job interviews, Ecuador, the police investigation, the whirlwind transformation from invisible assistant to recognized professional. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I would. But seeing it all laid out in black and white, reading about how I was subsequently terminated for filing a complaint, it just brings back how powerless I felt. How small. You were never small. They just made you feel that way. That's easy to say now, but for 3 years I believed it. I let Morrison and Hale treat me like furniture because some part of me thought that's all I deserved." She met his eyes. "Do you know what that does to a person? To spend years convincing yourself you're less than you are?" "Yes." The single word was quiet, but it carried weight. "I do." Elena waited. Dante was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city. "I grew up with nothing," he said finally. "Wrong side of town, absent father, mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make rent. I was 14 the first time I realized people like me weren't supposed to make it, that the world was designed to keep us exactly where we were." He turned to look at her. "So I became ruthless. I fought and clawed and did things I'm not proud of to build something from nothing. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that power was the only thing that mattered, that if I controlled enough, owned enough, commanded enough respect, I'd never feel powerless again." "Did it work?" Elena asked. "No, because power doesn't make you whole, it just makes you isolated." He smiled without humor. "You can control everything in your world and still feel small inside, still wonder if any of it matters." Elena understood that better than she wanted to admit. "Is that why you helped me?" she asked. "Because you saw someone who felt powerless and wanted to give them control back?" "Partly, but also because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That integrity matters more than power. That doing the right thing when it costs you everything is worth more than building empires on compromise." He stood up, walked to his desk, pulled out a folder. "The Foundation is expanding our international development programs. We're looking for a director to oversee everything: program design, partnerships, funding allocation. I want it to be you." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "You're exactly what we need: experience, vision, integrity. The board approved it yesterday, pending your acceptance, of course." He handed her the folder. Elena opened it with numb fingers. Inside was a job offer. Director of International Development, Russo Foundation. The salary made her head spin, more than double what she made at the council. Full benefits, travel budget, autonomy over program decisions. It was everything she could have wanted, and she couldn't accept it. "No," Elena said, closing the folder. Dante's expression didn't change. "Why not?" "Because this isn't about me being qualified. This is about you still trying to fix what happened 3 years ago, still trying to orchestrate my life." She set the folder on the table between them. I don't need you to save me, Dante. I'm not a project to be managed or a debt to be paid. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels like another chess move. Put Elena in a position where she's dependent on you, where her success is tied to your foundation, where she owes you. That's not... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. That's not what this is. Then what is it? It's me wanting to work with someone I respect, someone who shares my vision for what development work should be, someone who... He broke off, looking frustrated. It's a legitimate offer, Elena, for a position we actually need filled, by someone who's actually qualified, someone you're clearly attracted to. The words hung in the air between them. Dante went very still. What makes you say that? Please. You've been tracking my career for 6 months, sending gifts, making sure I have everything I need. That's not professional interest. That's personal. And if it is? His voice was quiet, controlled. If I'm attracted to you, does that invalidate the job offer? Does that mean you're not qualified? It complicates things. Life is complicated, Elena. You of all people should know that by now. He moved closer, and Elena felt her heartbeat kick up. I won't lie to you, Dante said. Yes, I'm attracted to you. I have been since that night at the gala when you walked into a room designed to humiliate you and refused to be small. When you sat at my table and held your own with ambassadors and directors. When you looked at me like you could see past the power to whatever was underneath. Dante, but that doesn't change the fact that you're brilliant at this work, that the foundation needs someone with your skills, that this offer is legitimate regardless of how I feel about you personally. He stopped an arm's length away. So the question isn't whether I'm attracted to you. The question is whether you can separate your professional value from my personal interest. Elena's hands were shaking. I spent 3 years being valued for the wrong reasons. Or not valued at all. I can't go back to that. I can't accept a position wondering if it's because I earned it or because the person hiring me has feelings. Then don't accept it. Turn it down. Build your career somewhere else. His eyes never left hers. But be honest about why you're turning it down. Is it because you genuinely don't want the position? Or because you're afraid of what might happen if you let yourself want something that involves me? The truth hit Elena like a physical blow. She was afraid, terrified, actually, not of Dante, not even of the job, but of wanting something this badly, of letting herself have it, of trusting that she deserved it. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. How to accept help without feeling like I'm losing myself. How to trust that I'm valued for the right reasons. You learn. Dante's voice was gentle now. You practice. You take risks. You let yourself be seen and valued, and you trust that the people who matter will value you for the right reasons. And if they don't, then you walk away. Like you walked away from Morrison and Hale, like you've walked away from everything that tried to make you smaller than you are. He paused. But Elena, you can't spend your whole life walking away from things because they might hurt you. Eventually you have to walk toward something. She knew he was right, hated that he was right. I need time, she said, to think about the offer, to figure out what I actually want. Take all the time you need. The position isn't going anywhere. He stepped back, creating distance. And Elena, whatever you decide about the job, I'd like to keep seeing you, as whatever we are. Friends, colleagues, something more. That's separate from the professional offer. Is it? Can it be? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. Elena picked up the folder with the job offer. I should go. Process all of this. I'll have the car take you home. I can take the subway. I know you can. Let me do this anyway. She didn't argue, just walked to the elevator with Dante beside her, rode down in silence, got into the waiting car. As they pulled away from the building, Elena looked back. Dante stood in front of the glass doors, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. She pulled out her phone, texted Mia. Need to talk. Emergency sister summit. The response was immediate. My place. 30 minutes. I'll have wine. The car dropped her at Mia's building. Her sister was waiting with an open bottle and 2 glasses. Okay, what happened? Elena told her everything. The article, Dante's office, the job offer, the admission of attraction, all of it. When she finished, Mia poured them both more wine. So let me get this straight, her sister said. You have a job offer that would literally be your dream position, working on international development at a major foundation. Autonomy, resources, meaningful work. But you're considering turning it down because the man offering it is attracted to you, and you're attracted to him, and that complicates things. Yes. Elena, that's insane. Is it? How do I know I'm getting the job because I'm qualified and not because Dante has feelings? Because you are qualified, ridiculously qualified. He didn't make up your experience or your skills or your track record. Those are real. Mia leaned forward. Here's what I think. I think you're using this as an excuse to not take a risk, to not let yourself have something you want because you're afraid it might not work out. That's not. It is. You've spent the last 6 months learning to value yourself again. But the moment something really good shows up, something that involves trust and vulnerability and letting someone see you, you're looking for reasons to run. Elena wanted to argue, couldn't. What if I accept this job and it doesn't work out? She asked quietly. What if I fail? What if I let myself trust him and he betrays that trust? Then you deal with it. You survive. You move on, like you've done with everything else. Mia grabbed her hand. But Elena, you can't protect yourself from everything. At some point, you have to decide what's worth the risk. And you think this is? I think you've been waiting 6 months for someone to tell you it's okay to want what you want. To stop apologizing for being good at what you do. To stop second-guessing whether you deserve opportunities. Mia squeezed her hand. So here it is. It's okay. You're allowed to want this. The job, and the guy, and all of it. You're allowed to take the risk. Elena felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking. Opening. What if I'm not brave enough? You walked into a gala expecting humiliation and came out with your career back. You quit a job with nothing lined up. You testified to police about a powerful man's company, knowing it could blow up in your face. Mia smiled. You're plenty brave. You just need to remember that. They sat there for a long time, drinking wine, not talking, just being sisters. Around midnight, Elena went home, sat on her couch with the job offer spread on the coffee table in front of her. Director of International Development, Russo Foundation. She read through it again. The responsibilities, the expectations, the resources she'd have access to. It was a good offer. A great offer. The kind of position she'd dreamed about in grad school before reality had taught her to aim lower. Elena picked up her phone, called Dante. He answered immediately. Elena? I have conditions. A pause. Then, I'm listening. If I take this job, we keep the professional and personal completely separate. In the office, you're the foundation director and I'm the development director. No special treatment. No using our relationship to influence work decisions. Agreed. And if at any point I feel like I'm being valued for the wrong reasons, or if the personal relationship becomes a problem for the professional work, I walk away from both. No negotiation. Fair. And you stop orchestrating my life. No more surprise interventions or carefully planned career moves. I make my own decisions from here on out. With one exception, Dante said. If I see an opportunity I think you'd be good for, I'm allowed to mention it. But the decision is yours. Always yours. Elena thought about that. Okay, deal. So you're accepting the position? Yes, on those conditions. She could hear the smile in his voice. When can you start? I need to give the council notice. 2 weeks minimum, probably 3 to transition properly. So early July. July works. I'll have HR send over the official offer and contract tomorrow. He paused. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for giving me the chance. And Dante? About the personal stuff. We take it slow, he said. Figure out what this is without pressure. Sound good? Sounds terrifying and necessary and right. Same thing, usually. They hung up. Elena sat in her quiet apartment holding the job offer, feeling something that might have been hope, or might have been terror, or might have been both. She'd done it, made the leap, taken the risk. Now she just had to figure out how to not mess it up. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Elena gave notice at the council. Margaret was disappointed but understanding, even helped her prepare for the transition. She tied up projects, trained her replacement, said goodbye to colleagues who'd become friends. and she went on actual dates with Dante Russo. Coffee that turned into dinner. A walk through the park that lasted 3 hours. A museum exhibit on sustainable architecture that he'd thought she'd find interesting, and she did. They talked about everything, his childhood and hers, her work in Colombia and his foundation projects, the investigation and the indictments and how it felt to have that chapter finally closed. They didn't talk about the future. Not yet. That felt too big, too dangerous. But they talked about the present, about who they were now, about what they wanted. And slowly, carefully, Elena let herself trust it, let herself believe she could have this, the work and the relationship and the life she'd thought was gone forever. It wasn't perfect. She still had moments of panic, of wondering if this was real or if she'd wake up and find it all gone. Dante still had a tendency to try to fix things before she asked him to. They had to learn how to navigate the professional and personal without crossing wires. But they tried. That was the important part. Her first day at the Russo Foundation felt like stepping into a new skin. Elena walked into the building wearing professional clothes and carrying her leather portfolio, and this time she belonged there. The development team welcomed her warmly. Dante introduced her in a staff meeting as their new director, and if anyone noticed the way he looked at her, the pride and warmth in his expression, they were professional enough not to mention it. Elena threw herself into the work, met with program managers and field coordinators, reviewed existing projects and identified areas for improvement, started designing new initiatives. It was hard, demanding, sometimes frustrating when people resisted change or when funding didn't materialize as quickly as she wanted. But it was hers, her vision, her programs, her mark on the world. And 3 months in, when Elena presented her first major initiative to the foundation board, a comprehensive education program spanning 5 countries, and they approved it unanimously, she felt something click into place. This was who she was. This was what she was meant to do. Not the invisible assistant fetching coffee, not the person made small by other people's limitations. This version, the one who designed programs and led teams and made things happen. After the board meeting, Dante caught her in the hallway. "Well done," he said. Professional, appropriate for the office setting, but his eyes told a different story. "Thank you," Elena smiled. "Your turn to buy dinner to celebrate?" "I was thinking something better than dinner." He glanced around to make sure they were alone. "There's a foundation event next month. Smaller than the gala, but still formal. I'd like you to come with me. Not as the development director, as my date." Elena's heart kicked. "You want to go public?" "I want to stop pretending we're not together, but only if you're ready." Was she? Elena thought about it, about what it would mean to be publicly linked to Dante Russo. The speculation, the judgment, the inevitable assumptions that she'd gotten her position through their relationship rather than merit. 6 months ago, that would have terrified her. Now? She'd proven herself, the team respected her, the board approved her programs. Her work spoke for itself. "Okay," she said. "I'll be your date." His smile was worth the risk. The event was everything the gala had been, but different. Elena walked in on Dante's arm, wearing a dress Mia had helped her pick out, and this time she wasn't afraid. People noticed, of course, whispered and speculated, but Elena didn't care. She introduced herself to the people she didn't know, had real conversations with the ones she did, and when someone inevitably asked how she and Dante had met, she told the truth. "I used to work for one of his companies, filed a complaint that probably saved him millions of dollars, got fired for it. He tracked me down 3 years later to apologize and helped me rebuild my career." She smiled. "We've been figuring it out from there." The honesty disarmed people, made them curious rather than judgmental. And through it all, Dante stayed beside her, not orchestrating or controlling, just present, supportive, equal. Late in the evening, they found themselves on a balcony, different venue, same city, same feeling of standing on the edge of something significant. "You did it," Dante said quietly. "Did what?" "Became exactly who you were supposed to be, without apologizing, without making yourself smaller." Elena looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the power and the control to the man underneath, the one who'd come from nothing and built everything, who'd made mistakes and tried to fix them, who'd seen her at her lowest and refused to let her stay there. "We both did," she said. "You stopped trying to control everything, started trusting people to handle their own lives. You made that necessary, hard to control someone who refuses to be managed. Good. You needed that." Dante laughed, pulled her closer. "I did. Still do. You keep me honest." "Someone has to." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Elena said, "This is working, isn't it? The job and the relationship and all of it." "It is. We're making it work." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Not because it's easy, but because it matters enough to fight for." That was the truth of it, Elena realized. Nothing about this had been easy. Not reclaiming her career, not learning to trust herself again, not letting Dante Russo into her life in all his complicated orchestrating genuine glory. But it mattered. All of it mattered, and that made it worth the risk. 6 months later, Elena stood in a village in Guatemala, watching teachers she'd trained work with students using curriculum she'd designed. The program was succeeding beyond her projections. Kids were engaged, parents were involved, the community had taken ownership. This was the work, the real work, the kind that changed lives and lasted beyond her presence. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dante, who was back in the city dealing with foundation business. "How's it going?" Elena took a photo of the classroom, sent it to him. "See for yourself." His response came quickly. "Proud of you. Come home soon." Home. The word settled warm in her chest. She had that now. A home, a career, a relationship, a life that was fully hers. It had taken 3 years of being invisible, 4 months of rebuilding, and 6 months of learning to trust herself and others to get here. But she'd made it. Not because Dante Russo had orchestrated it, though his intervention had helped. Not because people finally recognized her worth, though that recognition mattered. But because she'd decided she was worth fighting for, worth investing in, worth taking risks for. And once she'd decided that, everything else followed. Elena spent another week in Guatemala before flying home. Dante picked her up from the airport himself, which was unusual and probably against some unwritten rule about CEOs and their development directors. She didn't care. "Welcome back," he said, taking her bag. "It's good to be back." Elena fell into step beside him. "How were things while I was gone?" "Chaotic. Turns out you're irreplaceable. Flattery won't get you anywhere." "Won't it?" He smiled. "I was thinking dinner at your place. I'll cook. We can catch up properly." "You can't cook." "I can cook exactly 3 things. Lucky for you, they're all impressive." They drove to her apartment. The new one she'd gotten after her salary increase made the old place feel cramped. Dante made pasta while Elena unpacked and told him about Guatemala, about the successes and the challenges and the next phase of the program. He listened like he always did, asked good questions, made her feel heard. They ate dinner on her small balcony, watching the city lights come on as the sun set. And somewhere between the second glass of wine and dessert, Elena realized something. She was happy. Not cautiously happy or conditionally happy, just happy. Content. At peace with who she was and what she'd built. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, watching her face. "That I used to think happiness was something other people had. People who were born to the right families or made the right choices or never had to fight for anything." Elena set down her wine glass. "I thought I'd missed my chance, that the 3 years I lost meant I'd always be behind. And now? Now I think those 3 years taught me something important. That worth isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you claim. And once you claim it, nobody can take it away." Dante reached across the table, took her hand. "You're right, they can't. I'm also thinking that I love you." The words came out easier than Elena expected. Natural. True. Dante went very still. Then he smiled, and it was the most genuine expression she'd ever seen on his face. "I love you too," he said quietly. "Have for a while now. Was waiting for you to catch up. I'm a slow learner. You're cautious. There's a difference." He stood up, pulled her to her feet. "Dance with me." "There's no music. We'll make our own." They swayed on her small balcony, the city humming below them, and Elena thought about how far she'd come. From the invisible assistant to the woman in Dante Russo's arms. from powerless to powerful, from small to exactly the right size. It hadn't been a straight line. It had been messy and hard and sometimes humiliating, but it had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every risk taken, every decision to trust herself when everyone else said she was wrong. Worth it. What are you thinking now? Dante asked. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. With me? With myself. You're just a really excellent bonus. He laughed, kissed her. I'll take it. They stayed on the balcony until the city lights blurred together and the air turned cool. Then they went inside and Elena fell asleep in Dante's arms, feeling something she'd almost forgotten was possible. Safe, valued, seen, not because someone else had rescued her or fixed her or made her better, but because she'd rescued herself, claimed her worth, refused to stay small, and in doing that she'd built a life that was truly hers. 1 year after the gala that changed everything, Elena stood in the same museum ballroom, but this time she wasn't a guest. She was a speaker. The Russo Foundation's annual event had invited her to talk about the international development programs she'd built, about sustainable education models and community engagement and the future of development work. Elena looked out at the crowd, the same politicians and celebrities and business leaders who'd been here last year. Some of them probably remembered the invisible woman who'd walked in and disrupted their assumptions. Most of them probably didn't. It didn't matter anymore. She knew who she was, what she was worth, what she could do, and that was enough. Good evening, Elena began. I want to talk to you about the power of being underestimated. She caught Dante's eye in the crowd. He was watching her with that expression she'd come to know well, pride and warmth and love, but also recognition of an equal, a partner, someone who'd fought her own battles and won. Elena smiled and continued her speech, told her story, not the sanitized version, but the real one, about being invisible, about finding irregularities and filing complaints and getting fired, about 3 years in the wilderness, about the gala and the comeback and the hard work of rebuilding, about learning that sometimes the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift, the chance to prove them wrong. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People wanted to talk to her afterward, ask questions, share their own stories of being underestimated and finding their way back. Elena listened to each one, offered what wisdom she could, reminded them what she'd had to learn herself, that worth comes from within, not from external validation. Late in the evening, when most of the crowd had dispersed, Dr. Reeves found her. Brilliant speech, he said. You've come a long way from that first conversation at the gala. Thanks to you, that introduction to Margaret Lawson changed my life. No, you changed your life. I just made an introduction. He smiled. That's the thing people don't understand about success. Nobody gives it to you. They can open doors, but you have to walk through them. And you, Elena, have walked through every door with grace and competence and integrity. After he left, Elena found herself alone on the balcony where she'd stood with Dante a year ago, where everything had shifted. Dante joined her a moment later. There you are. Just taking a minute. Big day. Big year. Elena turned to face him. Thank you for all of it, for seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. I didn't do anything except remind you who you already were. You did more than that. You gave me a second chance, pushed me to take risks, loved me while I figured out how to love myself again. Dante pulled her close. We did that together. You taught me things too. That control isn't the same as connection. That real partnership means trusting people to handle their own lives. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is step back and let someone else lead. We're quite a pair. We are. He kissed her forehead. Ready to go home? Yeah, let's go home. They left the gala together, hand in hand, equals in every way that mattered. And as Elena looked back at the museum one last time, she thought about the woman who'd walked in here a year ago, terrified and determined and desperate to prove she was more than what they'd made her. That woman had succeeded, had reclaimed everything that was taken and built something even better. But more than that, she'd learned the most important lesson of all, that the only validation that truly matters is the kind you give yourself. That worth isn't bestowed by others, it's claimed by you, and that sometimes the journey from invisible to unforgettable starts with a single decision to stop being small. Elena had made that decision. And it had changed everything. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but completely, irrevocably, honestly. And that made all the difference.